Actually, do you want to talk about yourself first? Like, who are you? Who is this mysterious person on my stream?
I don't like talking about myself, but yeah, I'm John. I work at
John
DNEG
who?
Vancouver. Jon Catapia, not Catapia, it's Catapia.
Okay.
Um, I work at DNEG Vancouver. I'm the modeling supervisor there. Working with Andrew for a number of years now. Been in the industry, I think about the same time, like 11, 12 years. On the modeling supervisor. I've also mentor at Think Tank, like Andrew. Been doing it for maybe I think like 8, 9 years now.
9 years? Damn, that's crazy, bro.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I've been there for because it kind of like works out like you're always brought back every semester as long as someone asks to conduct a mentorship with you.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky enough over the all 4 semesters of every year for 9 years. I've been asked to come back. So it's a good thing, I guess. I guess I'm doing something right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you sometimes get like four students in like at once, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. I guess because I'm at the school a lot, so I think I'm I'm a face, I guess. So
Yeah,
people like that, I guess. Yeah.
sick. All right, how did you get into the VFX industry? One of the biggest,
How
most
did I get
important
into it?
questions.
I guess I guess start from the very beginning. I guess right.
Yeah.
Um, I guess as a kid, I was always interested in drawing. I loved to draw as a kid, and I knew that I wanted to do something creative. And I remember telling my parents this, and they hated it because I'm Asian, I'm Filipino, and they didn't like that. But I tried. I had no idea what I wanted to do coming out of high school, and I remember that there was like this question, like when I was a senior, as to like, what are you gonna do? Like we had to like create like a speech or like a write up as to what we planned to do after high school, and I had no idea. And I feel like I was like rushing to try to figure out what I wanted to do. And I knew that in high school I enjoyed Pixar movies. That was like my thing. So I enjoyed like Disney, Pixar movies, and Jurassic Park. So really, it was like Jurassic Park and Pixar that kind of got me into this. But I knew that I wanted to like work at Pixar. That was like my original
So
goal.
you originally want to do animation.
Yeah, I originally wanted to be like an animator.
Sick.
So I remember that coming out of high school, I took like a year off to kind of just like figure out what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Because like trying to be an animator at Pixar, it was kind of like I was like, where do I start? Like
Yeah,
this was
exactly.
a long time ago, right? So I had no idea. So I just looked up like animation schools within the city, and I saw like places like Think Tank or like Vancouver Film School, or
Wait, Think Tank was around back then?
I think it was very very early. I think it
Okay.
was only like maybe just like a few years into the school, I think.
Sick.
And yeah, Vancouver Film School. There's a school called Art Institute
Yeah.
that I think it's called. I forget what it's called, LaSalle or something like that. I forget what it's called, but
Yeah, sounds similar.
there's only like a few schools, and I remember I went through the list of tuition, and then I was like, nope, nope, nope. And then I ended up at a smaller technical institute of BCIT here in Vancouver.
Sick.
And then I took that literally just because it was just the cheapest option.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was going to be like paying the majority of this myself. So I was like, okay, I'll just go for it. So I took it. It was like a digital animation certificate or something like that for a year.
Yeah.
And it was more like tailored to games. So like our instructors, like the majority of our instructors worked at like electronic arts because we were just right across the street. And like some hobbyists at the time, but everything was like tailored to games.
Yeah.
And I remember like creating our demo reels and stuff and like learning the foundations is all revolving around just like a game way of working.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it was like really old back then, right? It was very different. Like I remember like we would have to like import our UVs into Photoshop, and then we would like texture
Sick.
in Photoshop. I
Yeah.
remember that. That was a long time ago. And we'd be like learning off of like tutorials that we would share with each other, or like we'd use like magazines or like books. Like I remember having like the Maya book with like the CD in the cover,
Sick.
like back when Maya was like red. I don't know. I don't know. Like it was before. Yeah, before it was even black. I remember the swap when it went to the black kind of look,
Yeah.
copying Max. I remember that. But yeah, back when Maya was like the logo was like a dragon and it was like red.
Yeah. So
Um, so yeah, it was like trying to make a demo reel tailored for games because I realized that like this isn't like a Pixar kind of like way of working, I guess. Like I didn't see anyone's demo reels that were kind of like tailored to like a Pixar kind of looking reel. So I was like, I guess I'll just like follow suit and just do what everyone's doing. And then this was also at a time where like Pixar, there was like a Pixar Vancouver, like a Pixar Canada.
oh yeah.
And this is when they were like doing like the shorts or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, but then it was kind of like on like the tail end of the studio, and then they like up and left. And then I was like, well, I guess that's gone. But I still tried. I made a demo reel. I made like a game character, like some like barbarian type dude. I wish I had that image. That would be fun to share.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I made my demo reel. I felt like I did pretty well in my class. There's like a class of like, I think maybe like 25, 30 or something like that. And then after I graduated, I realized like how much I didn't know,
For sure.
you know, because you're not led to, you're always led to believe that, you know, you got it, you know, that you always like, it's like, everyone's always just like, yeah, it's good. Just like, keep going, you know, just keep going. And I was like, yeah, nice. Like I feel encouraged.
Yeah.
But the only until like you graduate, do you realize like, man, I don't know jack shit. Like there's like, just, I start like comparing myself to like others and looking at other demo reels that are out there. I'm like, I really do not know much. And then I realized like, maybe this was because of, you know, the type of education that I chose, like the cheapest option.
Yeah.
And I remember that like really hit me hard. And I remember that like, it really hit me that I was like, oh, I felt so scammed. Like I felt like, man, like even though like I paid for like
Yeah.
not that much compared to others, I was like, man, like, because I didn't have money, you know, like I knew that my parents weren't going to support me. So I was like, oh, I just like wasted all that money. And then so like I realized that like there are things that I just didn't know and just didn't learn.
Yeah.
And
so you said you learned mostly game art workflow anyway, right?
yeah, I mean, we didn't dive into like game engines or anything.
Okay.
But it was really just like the style and the look was never like, how do we make
Try to
something look
feel-
realistic?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, everything was just very stylized,
Yeah.
you know? So everyone just did that in class. We never thought like, oh, how do we make something look realistic? We were always just like, how do we make something kind of look game-like or kind of like more playful, you know? And then so yeah, after like having this realization and like being very hard on myself, like I realized that like there was things that I just didn't know. Like I think like ZBrush, I forget what version of ZBrush. It was like ZBrush 2 or something like that. 3. And it was like very early. We only had like 1 or 2 classes on it. And the only thing that we learned was just to open it up, just to sculpt on something.
Yeah.
So we actually didn't even use it for like you know, making displacement maps or something like that, or like normal maps. I think we may have just done normal maps, but it was more so just intro to like the idea of sculpting something. And I knew that I wanted to do something kind of like organic related.
Yeah.
So I gravitated towards more like or organic and character work.
For sure.
So I realized that like I knew that I needed to learn this software.
Yeah.
So like I kind of like spent a lot of time to like read up on it and practice it and get used to it, because like, you know, learning ZBrush for the first time is like very difficult.
So did you just self-teach yourself this?
Yeah. So it's pretty much like getting used to just like teaching myself like how to digitally sculpt.
Yeah.
And just learning this software that seemed kind of like overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time on that. And of course, because I ran out of money, I had to find a side job. So I went. It sucks, like the idea like having like gone to school and then realize that you need to go back to like working like a restaurant job in order to, you know, survive. So
For
like
sure.
after going to school like that, that also hit me hard. You know, like going to school, graduate, you think like, oh, I graduated, now I can start my career. It's like, no, I graduated. I felt like I didn't learn anything. And now I got to work at a restaurant because I ran out of money, you know?
Yeah.
And then like student loans and whatnot. So I went back to a restaurant, and then I remember I just wanted to get something.
Yeah.
And I remember just like looking at all the available studios around the city, and there wasn't that many at the time.
Yeah.
There
This
was
was
like
before VFX was. I mean, this is before Vancouver was a VFX hub, right?
yeah, for sure. So like there were like not that many studios that we know are here now.
Yeah.
So I just knew like I just wanted to get in. It didn't matter where. I just wanted to get in.
Yeah.
And I knew that like I was a big fan of this show called Beast Wars
Oh yeah, the old
and
cartoon, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and Reboot.
Yeah.
These two shows were like
It's sick.
some of my favorites as a kid. Like
Yeah.
it was, I think it was like the first like animated 3D kid show or something
Yeah.
like that. And so I knew that I found out that the studio that made these was this studio called Rainmaker,
Oh,
and
it's
they were
Rainmaker.
from
Sick.
from Vancouver. And I was like, oh, that would be so cool if I worked for this studio that like made these shows that I love.
Yeah.
So I remember applying for this studio as a runner, as an assistant.
Hmm.
And I remember I nailed like I got an opportunity to have an interview, and I remember going to the studio. It was like on Broadway or something like that. Like it's in like a weird kind of area.
Hmm.
And I remember like going into the studio. This is the first time I ever like, you know, got invited to go to a studio. So I was like, you know, all dressed up and everything. Like I was pretty young at the time. I think it was only like 20, 21, 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I was seeing just like, you know, all like the Reboot posters and stuff like that. I was like so like hyped. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm here.
Sick.
And I remember going through the interview, and they were just talking about like what it takes to be a runner at the studio, and they were talking about like what the requirements were and like what I need to do on a day-to-day basis. Like I need to like clean or like do some runs or to the grocery store, or, you know, get the beer and pizza or something like that. And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. Like I don't care. Like I want to work there. So I was like so pumped. Like I was like so ready to start. But I remember that the reason that I didn't get this assistant runner job is because I didn't have a car at the time. So they said like
That's
one of the
unfortunate.
requirements is that you need to drive to the airport to pick up clients.
Really? Wait,
and
they'd
bring
send
them
a
to the
runner
studio.
to get clients? That's
Yeah.
crazy. I would
Like
not
you have to
trust.
drive to the airport, pick them up, and then bring them to the studio, and then bring them back to the airport when their like little, you know, weekend trip is kind of done or something like that.
Jesus.
And I remember that's the reason. Like they told me like that's why I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And I was like devastated, like completely devastated. And I was like, that's it. I'm screwed. Like I can't even get a you know, an assistant job, you know.
Hmm.
And then eventually, you know, still working at the restaurant. Like I'd be working at the restaurant in the days, and then at night I would just constantly be practicing
Yeah.
and like you know, expanding my portfolio and whatnot. And I would just do that constantly. Like it was just like a constant grind of like I was really being hard on myself because I felt like I really got scammed coming out of my first school.
Yeah.
And so it's like every night I was just like working really hard, you know, like I was really putting a lot of time into it because I knew that this is like my only option, you know, because I didn't have money, and like there's no way that my parents were going to support me on this. So
Yeah.
that's why I was so inclined on trying to just get an assistant job, because I just wanted to just get in.
Just some money, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to get in somewhere, and I knew it was going to be less money, you know, making tips than making tips at a restaurant. So I was like, fuck, I don't care. You know,
You just need that in, right?
exactly. And then I found this studio called Prime Focus.
Oh, so that was your first.
Yeah, so that was my first job, where I got a runner position there, and so I got it. I was super happy, and I knew it felt kind of weird because it didn't really look like a playful kind of studio. Like it was kind of like dark. It was very open plan.
Yeah.
And like I had no idea like what they're working on, or like what the setup was like, and like had like the programs that they were using were some that I wasn't familiar with or something like that. But I was like, I didn't care. I'm a runner. Like that's great.
Yeah.
You know?
When you're getting your first job, you just want anything, right?
Exactly. I was like, I didn't think about like, oh, I want to work at this studio. I want to work on this movie. Like I think that was the same for like everyone back then, where it's just like we just want to get in.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Like just get your foot in the door, and then I was like, I'll just figure it out the rest later.
Yeah, because like
you know?
people talk about how hard it is to get a job now, and I feel it's kind of always been that way. It's never been easy to get into this industry.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, now's the time where it's like, you know, you have like such big IPs, and like there's a lot more CG being used in movies and in TV and in streaming and stuff. So it's like we didn't have that when we were starting, so it's
For
like
sure.
it's just like it's a very different feeling. So I understand the frustration, but it's like I remember like back then I wasn't even thinking that. I wasn't even thinking like, yeah, I was never ever thought about like, oh, I want to work at ILM or
Yeah.
Weta or something like that. I was just like, I just want to just do this stuff that they do, that's
Yeah, exactly.
the only thing that I thought about. And then so I did the runner position there, and it was like an eye opener, because I realized like how much like little shit like I needed to do. Like I remember, yeah, like literally, cleaning the toilets, taking out the trash, like getting the beer, getting the pizza, sweeping the floor, mopping the floor, like
Yeah.
literally, like I remember like the toilet was clogged, and like, John, you got to do it. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I have like, I have like a nice dress shirt on, and I was like,
The,
fuck it, like,
the enthusiasm as well.
yeah, for sure. But I was totally for it. Like
Yeah.
I remember I was just like,
When
I
I
was
was
just
around, I was
so
the same.
happy.
For
Yeah,
sure.
I was just like, I was just so happy to be around these people, honestly. So I remember telling myself too, like as I was literally scrubbing shit out of a toilet, I was like, this is going to be temporary. I remember telling myself that. I was like, this is going to be temporary. There's no way I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life.
For
Like
sure.
I can't be an assistant for the rest of my life. Like I knew that. I was like, I just have to just suck it up. This is part of the process. Just trust the process.
Yeah.
I remember telling myself that all the time. And eventually after that, like I think it was like 4 or 5 months in, there were some positions opening for junior asset artists at
Yeah, how
at the
did you make this
studio.
transition? Were you very vocal when you were a runner about wanting to be an artist?
I wasn't, and I remember
Interesting.
the recruiter telling me that was a good plan. She told me that the reason why they took me on as a runner was that when we had the interview, I remember her asking me, the recruiter and the HR, they asked me like, oh, what do you want to do like after you become a runner? Like, what do you want to work as an artist? Like, do you what's your like dream position or something like that?
Yeah.
And I remember like I didn't really think about it at the time. Like I didn't know that this would be a question that they would ask. But I remember that I told them, I was like, I don't want to think about the next step or the next position after my runner position or what they could offer me more. I remember telling them specifically, I was like, I just want to focus on doing a good job at like what I'm doing. Like
Yeah.
I just want to just do a good job as being a runner and as an assistant. And I remember like a year later, the recruiter ended up telling me that like that was like a good decision that I said that, because they just wanted me to just focus,
Yeah.
because they didn't want me to treat the job as like below me. It's just like a stepping stone and that's it.
Yeah.
Like I really just wanted to just do whatever it took to just be surrounded by these people, to learn more and make connections,
For sure.
So yeah, I pat myself on the back for making that decision, because that's what ended up helping me get in. And I remember like staying at the studio late at night, like past 6 p.m. everyone's leaving, and then I'd jump on one of their computers and I'd like open up ZBrush or something like that, and I'd be like playing around and talking to producers, running them coffees all the time. You get to talk to a lot of different people. So I'd always be like talking to like the seniors, and, not even just like people that were in the 3D side of things, like people that were, compers too. And like people that were in pipeline, and people, even just like payroll, I would just talk to everyone, because I was just so interested on just learning more about how it works.
Yeah.
And because of those connections, it allowed me to hear about that there were junior positions being opened up. And I saw that they were like putting out the applications and whatnot. And I remember like, because I would set up the meeting rooms to do the interviews. And so I would gather the resumes and put it into the room with like a cup of water, and set up the chairs and all that. So I knew that this was happening, that they were hiring. So then I went to the recruiter, and then I asked her, I was like, oh, is there any way that I could have like a, just a chat? Like I know you guys can't give this to me, but I would just love to sit down and like kind of plead my case to see if it could be even possible. And then she said that she'll see what we can do.
I didn't realize you did so much before being a modeler.
Yeah, dude. Because it took me like from after school, after my schooling, till my first like actual artist job. It was 3 years. So
3 years,
a lot
shit.
of time. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
2 to 3 years. So
I
it's a
guess
lot of
it,
time
yeah,
that
really
passed.
puts into perspective like the frustrations of current students, I guess, as well. The fact that even like, 10, 12 years ago, we were still doing the same thing, right? We still had the same long periods of time before we could even get in, right? But
Yeah,
you just didn't give up,
yeah. I just that was just my mindset. Like to me, like there was just no other option.
for sure.
To me, it was just like this is you got to make it work. There wasn't like, oh, it's a year has passed. Like let me just stop and do something else.
Yeah.
I never thought that. I was just like, well, I just got to keep trying.
Mm.
So I enjoy telling this story when it comes to my students at the school and mentorship,
Yeah.
because I think like I always sounded like if you don't wait as long as me, like you can't complain. Like
Yeah, fair
that's
enough.
what I end up saying.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a lot of students, like they'll graduate and then like a month will pass and they're like no one's interviewing me or something like that. I'm like, you gotta wait, you gotta keep going. You
Yeah.
just gotta lock in like that. That's all it is really. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I was at Prime Focus as a runner, and then a couple of months in, I remember one of the producers asked me if I wanted to be a junior modeler on one of the films that they were about to pick up. And I remember I was counting pizza boxes because I was flattening the pizza boxes in the kitchen because
Yeah.
I had to flatten it because I knew I had to do the recycling before the day's end.
Yeah.
I was flattening pizza boxes. I'm like counting. I'm like 1, 2, and then the producer came up to me and asked me if I could if I wanted to be one of the junior modelers. And I remember I was so happy because that was like my break. Like that was
Yeah.
like
Oh man, it's the
thinking like
experience of my life.
yeah,
Yeah.
the best feeling, and I think
You
it's
finally
because like
made it.
exactly like, and it's just like, and it's not for me when that happened. It's not just like I went to school, like I didn't really work out, and then I had to go back to a restaurant to make some money, and then like
Yeah.
working as a runner, cleaning shit off toilets. Like it wasn't just that. It was more so just like I put my mind to something.
Mm.
I put my mind to something. I decided that I wanted to do this,
Yeah.
and I was able to get it.
Yeah.
And so it's like it was really just like I just worked my butt off. Really, it wasn't like someone handed it to me, or I took an easy way through it. I went like the hard way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people like now, like people get artist positions as their first
Oh, people
job.
walk out of school into ILM. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But for me, I took an assistant job. I
Yeah,
took a
exactly.
one job, and some people are not willing to do that. But
Yeah.
at the time, back then, 11, 12 years ago, I was just like, I didn't care. Like I was just like, I just want to be around this because
Yeah.
this is what I want to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got hired as a modeler,
hmm
and you were in Prime Focus for 10 months.
Yeah, so I was doing like a lot of like digidouble work, which was nice as like
Yeah.
a junior, like doing like some character stuff.
So
So that was quite good. It's like the biggest movie was Sin City 2, A Dame to Kill For. That was one of the first ones that I worked on, and then just like some smaller shows after
yeah,
that.
sick.
And then after that I went to Zoic. Oh yeah, I see on the screen. Yeah, I went to
Yeah.
Zoic
Yeah, I
for
got
a
your
little
LinkedIn
bit.
up.
hmm And then I did some more like digidouble work, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the sequel to that, which was so fun. Like some of these, you'll always have like these weird shows that like no one cares about, but
But they were good
you did
experiences,
something
right?
cool, or like it was a good experience.
Yeah.
Like so that was definitely one of them for sure. And then so after Zoic, I went to EA because they wanted to have more like film
Yeah.
people in doing their like next gen stuff.
Mm.
But then when I got there, like even though the facility is like amazing,
Oh
it's like
yeah, it's
literally
great.
the best place to, like you could
They got like soccer field and everything. It's crazy.
literally a full size soccer field, a full like indoor basketball court. Like there's you can get a chiropractic treatment there. There's a gym inside there. Like the cafeteria is crazy. Like
Yeah.
you can bring dogs there. There's like a dog park there. Like
Really?
you can rent games or movies whenever you want. Like
Sick.
it was so great. And like your seat, like your cubicle is like huge. It's always massive, and
Damn.
it's like it's so cool to be in there. But after working there, like, working in games, like my first stint in games, like I just wanted to just like try it out.
Yeah.
But I realized that like there was only so much that I could do
Yeah.
to make something better. So in this case, like for FIFA, like I was working on like the star heads, like like Messi, Ronaldo. I'm not a football guy, but
Yeah.
so I was working on the heads and like doing like expressions for the heads. And then I remember like there was only so much I can do because like the engine, like to change an expression, I could only update a normal map. And
Really?
then so I would so it's like even if I change like the shape of the geometry on the face to make an expression look more realistic,
Yeah.
like the reference, I couldn't get this updated because the rig wouldn't hit that expression, so it's not like a
Interesting.
corrective shape on that expression. It's just like
Yeah.
the change of the normal map. And at the time I was just like, is this all I can do? Like I remember I was like, I feel like I can offer more. Like I feel like that. And so I felt it was, I didn't feel good because I felt like after Zoke, like I felt like my trajectory was going higher. And then I felt like I wanted to do more.
Yeah.
And so even though the facility was the best facility imaginable in the city, probably of any studio, I just didn't really feel like I was getting what I was after. Like creatively and technically, I wasn't stimulated enough.
Yeah.
And at the time, like I was still applying to other places just to kind of like shop around. And I remember like I got rejected by DNEG initially twice. And I remember like they would just say the same thing over and over again, that like I don't qualify or I don't meet the expectations or something like that.
Yeah.
And then this was when DNEG Vancouver like just opened up. And then I had a good friend of mine.
That's so funny. You end up as the model supervisor eventually. But anyway, so continue the story.
Yeah, so I had that's funny. I had a good friend of mine who was a junior with me at Prime Focus. She was one of the first artists that started at DNEG Vancouver when it opened up.
Yeah.
And she asked me if I was like looking, and I was like, oh, I'm at EA, but like I wouldn't mind trying. And then so I sent her my stuff, and then she gave me a recommendation. And this was after I was already rejected twice. I was like, I don't know. I've applied twice. They rejected me. I don't know if it'll work.
This shows the power of a connection, hey?
Yeah. Honestly, like if it weren't for that, I don't know if I would have gotten in,
Yeah.
So the timing really like worked out. And this was the time where they were kind of like hiring. They were trying to like really ramp up.
Yep.
So I eventually got an interview, and then I got it. And even though like I remember I think I got like less money than I was getting at EA.
But it's more on the trajectory of where you want to go, right?
Exactly. But like for me, like, and like for like all my contracts, I've never like ended early. So me ending the EA contract early, because I think it was like set to be there for a year, but I ended up like, it says 3 months, but really I was only there for like about like a month.
Really? Okay.
The way that LinkedIn times it, it's like if it's like a week over, then it counts as like another month.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's like a week or a month and some change,
Damn.
So I really did not like the idea of giving up on this contract.
Yeah.
Because I already worked so hard for like everything that I had at that time, where I was like, why would I just like end this, for a chance at something else?
Yeah.
And that was hard for me to kind of get over, because I was like really scared to make that kind of leap.
Yep.
But
sure.
I'm glad I did, because eventually, I got hired as a build TD, as a modeler and a texture artist at DNEG. And then it started off, I think, with like, it was like a 6-month contract.
Yeah.
And then after the 6 months, it was like an extended for a year.
Yeah.
And then after I was extended for a year, then they gave me a staff contract.
Sick, dude.
And then I was there for the next 6 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And then so during this time, like, got to work on a lot of cool projects.
Man, you worked on some cool projects like Blade Runner, Pacific Rim, Battle Angel, Alita. I would have loved to work on these. Alita was your first lead project, right?
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah. It was like right after Pacific Rim and Blade Runner.
Without going into specifics, how did you transition to lead?
I think like early on in my time at DNEG, when I first started, like on those earlier shows, like I would always always had that mentality of like, I just want to help, like, so I didn't care about like money or title or anything at the time. I was just like, if I feel like I can help with the problem, I always just wanted to help.
For sure.
But I feel like maybe that's what they recognize, and that's why maybe they gave me longer contracts and they wanted to keep me on, or maybe it's because I was just cheap at the time. But I always just like I wanted to be helpful, so I was always there to like help with the conversations or spark conversations, and drive development or something like that, or help out other artists and whatnot. So if anyone had a problem like with like ZBrush or something like that, like they would like ask me, and then like I'd help them out.
Oh man, that's how I started talking to you, with ZBrush help.
yeah. Sure, actually, yeah, we'll get into that one.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so yeah, Alita was your first.
Yeah, so Alita, yeah, my supervisor on Pacific Rim, Mark Austin, asked me to be a lead on Battle Angel Alita, and I was a bit hesitant because I wasn't sure. Like, I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted, but I just he said that he just wanted me on because of my attitude and my communication and how I drive things and help out others. So he wanted a lead on that show. So I decided to take it, and then from then on, I was just like mostly the next all the other projects except for Men in Black. I was a lead on all those shows, so it kind of just like accelerated up from there. So really, like DNEG itself, like from when I started, because I kind of went into DNEG as like a
just
mid-level,
right?
Yeah, a mid-level artist. So every step of the way, like when it came to bigger projects or better assets, they always reviewed my contract. It was like year after year, they would always review it, and they always respected, what I did. They treated me very well, and they always compensated me at every step of the way. Like I know it's like it's much easier for people to like leave a studio and go to another studio to make more money.
Yeah.
But for me at DNEG, they just always treated me well.
Nice.
And like I owe them a lot for sure. Like I never had to like hassle for money or anything like that. Like it was always just like, oh, we're going to review and this is what we want to give you based on your performance.
For sure.
And I've always been happy with it. So I was like, I guess like what I'm doing is just like what's expected or like is what they want, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it worked out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I feel DNEG has always been good to me as well, for sure.
Yeah, I think I owe them a lot for sure, and it's just like even like the early staff contract, like being a mid-level artist and then being trusted with like having a staff contract and being like
very rare in the industry.
Yeah. We don't want you to leave. We want you to stay here for like the long term. Like that puts that there's a lot of trust there, right? And I think like with that, it also encourages me, right? Because if they have that trust in me, then it makes me want to, fight more, right? And work harder, right? So it's like a win-win for both sides, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Dune 2021. This is when I came to DNEG.
Yeah. This is
our first show together. But my very first interactions with the Jon was I needed help in ZBrush. so Mark just put me onto you to get some help with that. But then
that's normally the call, and like I'll be working and then someone will just tap my shoulder. I'm like, you need ZBrush help? And they're like, yeah. They'll just like nod their head. I'm like, okay, let me come over.
Actually, let's go into this. Since you're a supervisor, you're a model supervisor now. What is the main differences between a lead and a supervisor for people that don't know?
A lead and a supervisor. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I guess the way that DNEG treated the lead title is you're kind of like 50-50. So it's like you're 50% on the box and you're 50% like helping out the team.
Yeah.
So for me in my contract, like it's always kind of fluctuated that percentage. Yeah. And it really depends on the show.
Yeah.
So whether a show is large, has a lot of assets, or maybe it's smaller and has like very complex assets, could change kind of like the structure of how they wanted to utilize me. So the way that I always say it to my my HODs or my head of department at the time is, whatever you guys want to do, like just let me know, like to let me know what the problem of the show is or what kind of show it is, and I'll adjust. And that's how I've kind of like had my attitude going into it, is just I'll do whatever you want me to do. You're
talking about like box percentage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So whenever a new show was coming up, we'd always like discuss like what's expected or who's going to go into what show. So they would always be generous enough to ask me like, what do I want? Like,
Yeah.
or what
Sick.
show do I want to go on? And I would always just tell them like whatever you want me to do, like I'll do it. Like, so in this case, like you could see Alita, I was a lead,
Yeah.
but then after that, Men in Black, I was just a senior. So in this case,
Mm.
like for Men in Black, there was just a lot more work to be done.
Yeah.
So because of that, they said like, oh, like it probably help if you can just like help out with like the hero level stuff,
Yeah.
and we'll just get the supervisor to
So
watch
there was
over
no
the
lead
team.
on that show. It was just a
Yeah.
super and seniors. Okay.
Or in this case, there was a lead. It was Daniel last name, Axelson.
Oh
Do you
yeah.
remember
Yeah.
him?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember
Yeah,
him.
Axelson. Yeah. So because there was a lot more facial work to be done on there,
Yeah.
he just needed more hands to kind of just do the work.
Yeah.
You know. So I was just like, yeah, don't worry about me. Like, you don't have to worry. Like, I'll just like blast through all this stuff, and then we'll be good. And in this case, for Men in Black, Men in Black 4, I was doing modeling and texturing at the same time. So like,
That's quite rare in the industry, right?
to do
To do
both.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends. So like, I guess because I was there for some time, it's like it's easier to communicate this. And DNEG has always been like if you want to try another department, like you can. And so there were definitely a lot of people that like swapped. You know, there were even people on the team that you probably didn't even notice. Actually, Andrew, it's like some people even like moved from like the layout department into the asset department,
Oh, I didn't
or
notice
even
that.
moved out from our asset department and then went to the generalist department, or from
Yeah.
look dev and then went into lighting. So DNEG was nice in that regards, that you can actually, you know, ask about this if you want, and kind of like move around based on your skill level, and if it's feasible enough for them to execute. So in this case, like I guess I saved them time because I would texture the creatures or the characters that I was working on, and it's
Do
much more
you
easier for them to kind of manage, right? Because it's just with one person, I guess.
do you feel? Because I kind of feel with hard surface the crossover doesn't work as well as the creature does, right? Between model and texturing. Like
Yeah.
you'd be much
Yeah,
more
yeah.
likely to model and texture a creature, but you'd be much less likely to model and texture a vehicle, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. Because the reason being is because a lot of the surface information of something
Would
that is
transfer between
organic,
them, right?
yeah, is more beneficial on the texturing side of things.
Yeah.
So that really bridges kind of like that gap between the two, as if it were like something that were a hard surface, like a vehicle or
So
a ship.
that's how you were able to model and texture the worm, right? For Dune.
Yeah. Because it was like I have control over both sides. So now that I have control over both sides, it's easy for me to understand the workflow, and I can like delegate, make a template out of it, and I just follow it because I know both sides, like the give and take on both kind of departments.
Yeah. For sure. But yeah. So then after Dune, which was best show, then we did like Uncharted and Slumberland, and then you left DNEG. You went to Scanline for a bit.
Yeah, this was a hard decision because I
This is
wasn't.
post-COVID, right? Yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is right
Post-COVID,
after
we
COVID.
were working from home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I remember the decision where I wanted to just try something new.
Yeah.
And an opportunity came up at Scanline as a lead modeler there, and I decided to take it.
Yeah.
And it was hard. I remember like it was hard, like leaving the team, like because I've been there for so long. Like
6 years. 6 years is a long time for
A long
VFX
time
for
at one
people that don't
studio.
know it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was hard because like it's like, you know, I like essentially like grew up there, you know. So
Yeah.
leaving that was very difficult. And then I went to Scanline, and it was such a new, different kind of challenge.
They used 2S Max.
Yeah, like they use Max for like the look dev, so like you can still like
yeah.
work in Maya. So
But
like
does the pipeline go through Max?
I think like I forgot how it works. We would still publish everything through Maya,
Oh, interesting.
but
But Max
look
was
dev
an
would always
option.
pick it up. Yeah, and that's where I think they would light it or something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But it was working on the Flash was a crazy show, like
Yeah.
probably one of the most craziest shows that I've ever worked on. And this was at like a time for Scanline where they were very, very busy, and
Yeah.
you know, the transition of working from home and COVID
Did they also
time.
get Did they also get bought by Netflix as well?
Oh
at the
yeah,
same
that was
time?
happening around the time when I was there too.
Interesting.
Yeah, even though I didn't really feel an effect of it.
Yeah,
I just knew that there was like a
it's
lot
just
of
happening.
commotion like around it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I remember, yeah, I worked on that show for like it was like literally like a year,
yeah.
and then
Back to DNEG
Reese, yeah, 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 and then
For Doom Part Two. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
for Doom Part Two, they essentially got the old crew back together. That's when I also went back to DNEG. But yeah, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah, I remember this. I remember, yeah, because Reese, the VFX soup on Dune Part Two, I remember he reached out saying that they're gonna make some more sandworms.
Yeah,
So then he's like, you want to come back? And then I was like, ah, okay. I remember I was like, oh, this is gonna like I have to have like another difficult conversation a year later.
yeah.
And but Scanline was, they took it well. They understood. Like
I
I
mean, you
told
already
them,
gave them
it's
a
like,
year. A year is a long time.
yeah, it's a long time. I mean, granted, like they were like everything was like getting better. Like the trajectory was like looking really good. So like I
Yeah,
wanted to stay around, but it was just the fact. It was literally just the fact that it was Dune. Like that
yeah.
that was
That's
literally,
what pulled us all back.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like how do you say no? How do you say no to that?
Yeah,
You know?
because you
So
also know all the other team is coming back as well, right?
yeah, and I knew, like, I remember talking to everyone, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's coming back, and she's coming back, and he's coming back," and I was like, "Oh man, like how, it
Getting
was
the
really just
band
like a
back together.
reunion." Yeah, and and thankfully so, because that relieved a lot of stress for us too. I think
Yeah,
because a lot of that original crew kind of came back.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were lead at DNEG again, and it looks like you were
Mhm.
model supervisor 2 months ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then I started the modeling supervisor role. Yeah, 2 months ago. Yeah,
Sick. Congrats, man. That's very
yeah.
cool.
Thank you. Yeah, so like or at least the modeling supervisor role for me doesn't really change too much what I'm doing. Like I'm
Yeah,
still mentoring. I'm still helping out. I'm still doing helping with the bidding. Still doing interviews.
yeah,
Still doing work.
for sure.
Um, and I think that, but that's what's nice about DNEG is that when it came to any of my like title changes and whatnot, it was um, it was always like a question rather than like this is what you're gonna do,
For sure.
which I appreciate a lot because they would take my concerns into consideration, um, and be like how do you want to navigate this? Like how do you want to work within this position? And
Yeah,
they were always very receptive to it in terms of like what I wanted to do in terms of like for instance, like I wanted to be able to do work still,
yeah,
because I don't want to just delegate. I don't want to just tell people what to do.
yeah.
I want to be close to the work. I want to understand the problems from like,
You want to
working
stay
in
up to
the
date with the
factory.
technology.
Yeah, I want to stay up to date. I don't want to feel, like left behind in terms of like
Yeah,
the technical issues. And I don't want to just look at shotgun or like look at a Excel spreadsheet all day.
yeah,
I don't want to look at those numbers. Like I want to help out.
yeah.
So they were able to, yeah, accommodate that. And so it's like it's not really like my title. It's kind of just like more of the same
Yeah.
that I've always been doing, I guess. Yeah.
Do you ever think back, like the fact that you were like, how back to when you were a facility assistant, like how much of a massive jump you've had over your career? Like, did you ever imagine you would be the sole model supervisor at DNEG Vancouver?
I don't think I ever thought, honestly, like going throughout my career, there was never a point where I thought about
Like the
higher
path?
titles.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never thought about like how do I move up. I never thought that. Like when I was asked to become a lead, or when I was asked to become a supervisor, I was only ever asked. I never said like, "Hey, like I want to do this.
yeah,
Like this is what I want, or else I'm gonna leave, or something like that."
for sure.
I was always just like uh, called for it, and that's just how I've just gone about my career, honestly. Like
Yeah,
for me, it's just like I never sought out, like, yeah, I never sought out the titles. I just wanted to just help out. I just wanted to just make sure that like the team's all good. Like any way that I can improve something, or help someone
mm,
learn something, like I'd always be there. Or like, and I still am doing like cool stuff on my end as well. Like still
yeah,
doing some really cool creatures or characters and stuff. So that's always just how I've just gone about my career. It's just doing the best I can, trying to learn and be helpful.
yeah,
And so I guess I found like I guess with that comes like, I guess good communication, and then the mentoring also helps with the communication. So that also helps with me in my
Yeah.
the leadership roles and the supervision roles. So it just kind of worked out that way, and I think that that's a good thing to kind of like for like the next generation, or like anyone young coming into it. It's like
Yeah.
money will come.
For sure.
Titles will come. Like you should just focus on like yourself. Like how do you just perfect your own personal way of working,
Yeah.
and how do you up your communication skills? How do you sell the best service possible to
Yeah.
whatever studio that you're going to be working at? And I think that should be like priority number one, I think. Yeah.
It's funny because like your approach to your career is actually pretty different to mine. I was very vocal about what I wanted, actually,
Mm-hmm.
but it was never about title, and it was never. I never essentially forced what I wanted, but I was always just very vocal about my excitement to do something, and then
Oh
I
yeah.
and then
I
I
mean, yeah, yeah.
delivered.
No,
Yeah.
for sure. For sure. I think like for like in the beginning, even though like I guess I primarily do like character and creature work.
Yeah. You were
Like I
vocal
would say,
about
like,
wanting to do creatures, right?
I think
But
actually
not in a
not like
push. Oh, really?
even yeah,
Interesting.
like even in the beginning, like if you scroll down, like you can see like when I was doing like stuff like Blade Runner
Yeah.
and like those early shows, like I never Pacific Rim, Star Trek, like Miss Peregrine's, like all these shows, like I would stumble upon doing organic and creature stuff,
But then you would
but
prove
I never
yourself.
had a preference. I never said
Interesting.
to them like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I should do. Like I want to do this, or else I'm gonna go. Like
Yeah.
it was always just like just give me whatever you want.
Yeah.
And but if it's a character or creature, like yeah, I can definitely help out with that. But I don't mind what asset that you gave me. So I've done like on some of the early shows, like I did a ton of hard surface work. Like a lot of buildings and environments and stuff like that, and a lot of texture work.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I just wanted to just be that guy that will just help out anyone. And yeah, that's just how I just treated my career. And then eventually in the later years, they just kept giving me more creature work and giving me more character work, because I just ended up, I guess, doing the same thing over and over again. And then I guess I
Interesting.
just did it well enough to where they asked me to just do it again.
So you just stumbled across the worm, essentially.
Yeah, I think like I
So-
think like personally, like internally, I know it was like I gravitate towards the organic side, but
Yeah,
I
for
feel like
sure.
for my career, I didn't want to like try to strong arm them into giving it to me.
Yeah,
It's
for
just
sure.
they just felt like I was I guess the right person for the job,
Yeah.
which I greatly appreciate. And then it just made me work harder. It's like when
For sure.
on Dune 1
When you got
Reese-
these opportunities, you worked hard, essentially.
Exactly. And I think it like to me, it's like it pushed me even more. Like I remember when like I was literally the first, like one of the I'm pretty sure I was the very first artist on the first Dune.
Yeah.
And then Reese pulled me. He's like, we got to make this. And then he pulled
Yeah.
it up on the screen. It was a worm. I was like, oh God, like
Sick.
okay, let's do that. Let's figure this out. So like, but that trust again,
Yeah.
it's like that it comes with a lot of respect, and
For sure.
I have to respect that respect. So it made me work really hard, and I gave it my all, just like everyone else did on the first Dune. Honestly, like everyone, like you can really feel it
Yeah.
in the air. Like everyone knew that they were working on something special.
Yeah. Dune 1 was definitely a special experience, for sure.
Yeah.
I
But
guess, yeah, this kind of transitions into like another question I had about like, what do you think students' biggest mistakes are, and just general advice for students now, since we're kind of hopping on the topic of like student expectations.
I think honestly, like I feel, because I've been mentoring for a number of years now, so I feel like I've seen like a wide range of types of students that come in and out of the school and going through mentorship. And honestly, I think like the biggest kind of like factor is probably like the initial kind of like mindset going into the education,
Yep.
where like if they don't have that mindset of just like perseverance, nothing else really matters. Because if you can't really like persevere through like a problem, whether it be like a creative problem or a technical problem, or just you internally battling with your own mind and your own negative thoughts, if you can't persevere and like push through that, it can be very easy to get discouraged, right?
For sure.
And so I think it kind of like starts with that mentality of having that kind of perseverance or that will, that strong will to
Yeah.
push through anything. Is to me is kind of like the start,
Mm.
because I've seen like students that are very creative or students that are very technical, but when it comes to a problem, like they'll kind of just like freeze.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be up to me as like the mentor to just like force them out of it.
Yeah.
It's like what I try to do is I try to like understand like where the thoughts are coming from,
Mm.
and see if we can like step back for a second to kind of put it into perspective, to then kind of talk through what it might take for them to step out of it themselves to
Yeah.
get out of that kind of
So
that mental state,
you're not there just as their personal motivator, essentially.
Yeah, because I think like to me, like I take like my mentorship quite serious, because
Yeah.
I don't see it as like, hey, like you're gonna work with me and you're gonna press these buttons and then this is the result that you're gonna get. Like I
Yeah.
don't really see it as that. I see it as like a kind of like, it's like career coaching, really.
For sure.
It's like it's not just about like how do we get through this creative problem or this technical problem. It's like, how do we do that, but how do we harness that knowledge and how do we apply it to everything else going forward?
Yeah.
Whether it be something that's like um their personality or their mental state, or just like how to actually do the work. I think it's like the whole package is what I see the mentorship as. And that's why I emphasize the whole like strong will, perseverance type thing, because I think like that's one of the biggest mistakes, is like not being like kind of like mentally prepared for what you're about to get into.
For sure.
Because I think a lot of students go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to do something creative, I'm going to do something artistic, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then when they realize that it's not that, it's like they're like, whoa, what is this? I don't want to do this. Then it's just like, well,
like we're not just having fun, right? We're learning to create a product, essentially.
Exactly. This is the job, right? And the computers is like your medium, right? But you're just a digital contractor, right? That's what it is, right? When it all boils down to it, it's still like a client contractor service relation. It's just we're just using CG, right?
For sure.
That's how I see it. I don't see it as like I'm becoming an artist. Like
For
I
sure.
never thought it. I never see it as that. Yeah.
I personally don't really consider myself an artist, more a technician, I guess. Is the way I kind of view myself. Because I don't feel like I'm creating art. I'm just creating the product we're being essentially hired to create for a client, right?
Yeah. Because you could have an artistic eye in some scenarios where it's very useful, but when it comes to creating someone else's product, it can be very strict, right?
For sure.
So there are times where the interpretation can be aided with your creativity, for sure.
Yeah.
But there are some times where it's like it's just solely just like a technical way of approaching something, or maybe even a literal way of approaching something, because that's just what the client wants, And I've seen people all the time where they'll get like offended by notes, something that's creative, and the artist just doesn't agree with it. And I was like, that's okay if you don't agree with it, but that's just it's their product, it's their money. So it's like, how do we help them realize their vision? That's our job. It's not how can I be artsy fartsy about this and to put my stamp on it.
For sure.
I don't see it as that. Yeah.
So do you feel like that is one of the biggest, I guess, mistakes that but students have when first getting into CG, is that they assume they have the wrong mindset and they assume they will be an artist instead of looking at it as being a job, essentially.
Yeah. That's kind of how I see it. Like I use the analogy a lot of like I'm hiring a painter to paint my house. And I have a house. I need a painter, someone that understands how to paint, and then paint my house. This is the color that I want to paint it. But then if the painter that was painting my house is like, okay, well, let me spin this a bit. Let's not use red. I know that you want red, but I was thinking that yellow would work better, or something like that. And it's just like, if I'm the client and I'm paying you, it's like, I'm telling you I want red, then I want red.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I'm not asking you for that creative kind of spin on it. I'm literally telling you that.
Yeah, for sure.
Or if I needed a painter and then I was saying like, I don't know what to paint my house, give me some options.
Yeah,
The painter, as the the hired personnel, would give suggestions based on their expertise.
for sure.
That's where maybe the creativity could come in.
Yeah,
But not the majority of the time it's not like that. It's
Yeah.
the majority of the time is that the client wants something, they know what they want, they just need the person, the professional, to execute it.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess mindset, I guess, is probably one of the biggest mistakes students have when first coming into this. Do you feel, I guess this might be a pretty bold thing to say, but do you think this industry is not for everyone?
Oh no, I say that specifically
Yeah,
in the mentorships before we even start. I say this. I always say, like, I personally think that like it takes like a certain kind of mindset to really thrive in this industry.
for sure.
One, because it's very competitive, right?
Yeah,
So getting past that is very important. And two, it speaks upon that whole idea that we're not super artistic, right?
yeah,
And because I've had many friends that, like, when I was a junior, where they just couldn't handle notes,
yeah,
and literally after their first show, their first studio, their first movie, they quit the industry.
yeah,
And it just, like, I don't know, it got personal or something like that. It's just like they just weren't about it, you
Yeah.
know. Or like those people that come into the industry where, they're always like grumpy and jaded, and they hate all the clients and feedback and stuff, and they don't work well with others in a team environment.
yeah,
It's just like, well, that it's just not healthy, right? So it's like, why, it's not good for you, like,
sure.
it's just not the industry for you, So
For sure.
I definitely think it takes a certain kind of personality to really.
And there's nothing wrong with that as well. Like if the industry is not for you, there's totally other jobs for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably, it's very important that people going into the industry also understand this, like, up front,
Yeah.
Because it's not.
It's a very glamorous looking industry.
Yeah, exactly. Especially from our department too, right?
Yeah.
Our department is arguably, one of the most flashy, which is
why it's
schools teach it,
saturated,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not like you don't think of like someone working in Match Move or something like that, or layout,
or a
thinking
lighter
that
or something, right?
Yeah. It's very.
I think assets is very tangible. Like it's something you can see essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, this kind of leads into, do you have any other big mistakes students make?
There's a lot of mistakes there, to be honest. Like, I think.
Yeah. What are the biggest ones?
I think for myself and like what I've seen personally, like when it comes to like my mentorships, can be like the concept choice. Like of course, because we're making assets, like the concept choice is the big one.
Like overestimating their ability.
Yeah, overestimating their ability, or just not understanding what they're able to create.
Yep.
But I think one of the biggest things is biting off more than you can chew.
For sure.
And I think like a lot of the times I always end up suggesting to the students to do less so the quality is higher.
For sure.
Rather than doing more and then it just looks half-assed,
Yeah.
right? Because in the end, when I review like demo reels and whatnot, I'm not really thinking initially how much time it takes to make something.
Yeah.
My first initial thought is always going to be, does it look good? Yes or no? And I'll go from there. Then the next question is asked in my head, So if right off the bat it just doesn't look that great, then I'm gonna ask like why, right?
Yeah.
But if it looks great, I'm gonna be like, oh, I'd love to see more, or I want to
sure.
see like the breakdown and how they figured it out, you
Yeah.
know. But if it doesn't look good, it's just like I'm very just like off put right away, right?
For sure. Yeah, I've had students who are like, oh, I want to build an aircraft. I want to build the pilot. I'm going to put it in a hangar. And I'm like, no, chill. We'll just make a very good aircraft. And then if we have time, then maybe we can build the hangar, right?
Yeah. Like you always hear like, this is why I don't like really like schools that are very like filmy schools, but have like VFX curriculums.
Yeah.
Because they'll always like invest a ton more time onto the film aspect. but then everything looks like it's from like a 90s game, you know.
Yeah.
But then they're trying to shoot for the same positions as others, you
Yeah.
know.
That
So like it
focused.
doesn't make sense. Like it's not like you're not getting hired for your film capabilities or how you make a story or whatnot, but and how you show it with your CG work.
Yep.
You know, you'll get hired because you're looking for, you know, an asset artist position or a rigging position or a lighting position, and you should be displaying like almost exclusively that,
Yep.
right? But then when you add in that whole, I'm also making a film, it's like a whole nother, that's like a whole different department,
For
you
sure.
know?
And
And
then, yeah.
I don't need that.
Yeah, exactly. And then to compete with other specialists, it's just too hard, especially at the start.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. So it's like, why not just cut the fluff, get straight to the point,
Yeah.
and then just focus on that.
For sure.
So it's like, if you're trying to show off that, you know, you can make a cool looking asset that looks realistic, why don't you just pick something that you can focus on and you know, up the quality rather than choose too much? You know, like I always get like students that are like, oh, I want to have this robot flying through the camera, and then it's going to break through the window, and it's going to have these flapping mechanical wings. And I'm just like, oh. And then I'll ask like, oh, have you rigged or animated anything before? And they'll be like, no, I've just done a bouncy ball. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, we can't do this then. You know, like,
Yeah, for sure.
This is not the demo reel that we should do. Like, you know, like, so I think like, because it's exciting to choose something ambitious, right?
Yeah.
It should be, because you're imagining, you have this idea and in your head, and you're thinking like, oh, imagine if I made this, you
Yeah.
know.
You imagine
So that's what you're
the final
imagining.
result being
Yeah, you're
so
imagining the
amazing.
final result, whether or not you can make it or not, or whether or
Yeah,
not
exactly.
you're able to, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I mean. It's like, if you don't have a good self-awareness as to like what you're able to create, then it's going to be hard for you to pick something ambitious. I think like it's better to understand like where you sit in terms of your skill level and work around that,
Yep.
just enough that where you can up the quality.
For sure.
So something that you're familiar with, that you've maybe done before, and then enhance that look, rather than do something that you've never touched before. You still have to learn at the same time, and also because like for the mentorship, it's like 4 months, right, at Think Tank. So
it's not long to do
it's like
high
not
quality.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're learning, because you have to learn it, you have to execute at a high degree, and then you need to show the breakdown, and then that's what you're going to be putting out there, you know. So if anyone could do that in 4 months, then, you know, why would they not do that? But it's like there's just so much to do in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you make it harder for yourself by choosing something that you've never done before, or something that's way too ambitious, or just like content wise, like quantity is just too much. You know what I mean?
So lack of self-awareness of their own ability is another mistake, essentially.
Yeah. I would say that for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah.
What about what's another big mistake?
At least from my perspective at the school, it's choosing a mentor, you know, or choosing like the path of education, like how you're going to acquire this education. Whether it's like, you know, I can't really speak like solely just like at our school, but you know, it's important where you get the information from.
Yeah.
Because I think like there's so much information out there, lots of free information out there. But I think that what works well for Think Tank is that the mentorship is, you know, you're choosing someone that exclusively works, that is actively working in the industry, right?
Yeah.
And I think that context is very important, because you get like hands-on, like first-hand experience as to like what you should do relative to your department that you're trying to seek out, right?
So find someone that actually does the job you want.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think mentorship is very powerful for sure, and I think every school that is, you know, teaching CG, I think there should be a mentorship type of aspect to their curriculum, because if you're just teaching from books or from tutorials and like how to make
you can do that for free online.
Yeah, you can do that anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But like the stuff that there's a lot of stuff that like you and I will both you know, teach our students that like you can't search online. You know, the reason being is because the context doesn't exist online.
Yep.
Like what we would provide is the insight given a certain context and how to tackle certain problem, or whether it's creative or technical,
Yeah,
based on this context.
for sure.
And I think that's very important, because how you work on your own personal demo reel at home and at school is very different from like how you would work, beside me
Yeah.
inside a studio, right?
Mm.
So why would you not want to try to seek out that specific information? Like how would you do this?
Yeah.
And then when the student asks me like, oh, like how would you do this at work? I'm never thinking like, okay, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
I always start by saying like, what is the context?
Yeah.
What is the shot?
Yeah.
Like give me some context, and then I'll tell you how. Because if the context changes, if the shot changes, then the way that we approach it is different.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
So
you could say, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So this actually leads into what my second question was going to be, was imagining juniors have got their first job. What is juniors' biggest mistakes entering the industry? And this kind of leads into that, of essentially now we have working from home is completely different to now having context you have to follow at work. So it leads into the thought you're going into now. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but continue that thought.
So I think like, because like it kind of, it does bridge into that question, because context is what matters, right? So when you say like, what do juniors struggle with the most in their first job, the difference between a junior and a mid and a senior is really going to be about like pipeline experience, right?
Yep.
Juniors can still have like the capable knowledge, the technical knowledge to achieve something realistic, just like a senior might.
Yep.
But working with context of a show, a budget, a shot, a team size, like just overall skill within the department, changes the way that you approach something. So this is what the juniors are not exposed to initially, right?
Yeah.
So because they're not exposed to this, how do you kind of like compensate for the lack of?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So
it's funny because like, people ask me like, well, how long would it take you to model this thing I'm modeling on stream? And it's like, it's entirely about context. Like, it's not an answer you can just give, because we don't know context of shot, how it's used, if it will be destroyed. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest smack in the face that juniors receive when they step into the industry, because now they realize they don't actually know how to work in production, and they realize the art side of doing the modeling and stuff was just like the tip of the surface. Like, it's not actually how we
the iceberg.
work. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. So it's like, how does a junior compensate for the lack of this?
Yeah.
And what I think that a junior getting into the industry or getting their first job, like, I think what's important is that, because you're selling a business, right? You're selling a service. Your service is as a junior CG artist, right?
Yep.
So the best thing that you can do as an independent contractor that has just gotten their first big gig is to not look like a junior, right? Not to work like a junior. If I was supervising said junior, like, you would want to make sure that the speed, the quality that you're outputting is all up to par. It shouldn't be. There's already an expectation that the quality is going to be lower, right?
For sure.
But imagine if it's not.
Yeah.
Imagine if like the quality in which you operate is already at a high level, and your communication skills are very high as well.
Yep.
Having those as a junior coming into your first position is great.
Yeah. The communication part specifically, like I feel a lot of juniors are too afraid to ask for help because they think the expectations of them is too high, and that ends up actually hurting them. So I think it's much better for a junior to be open about learning, things like pipeline, or asking questions about like hitting deadlines and stuff like that. Where I feel like a lot of juniors are too afraid to step up. Well, not step up, to speak up, because they don't want to look bad. But I feel like, I mean, you deal with bidding and stuff way more than I do. So when it comes to working with a junior, there is an expectation that the junior is not going to perform at a mid or senior level, right? Like, that's taken into account,
Like when we're going through the list of like, these are the tasks that we have on the show, and they're deemed as like a certain grade or a certain level.
Yeah.
And then we'll look at the available roster of the artists, and then we'll start pairing with a task.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously, if like a junior on their first show like is operating at a high level, like in terms of their normal CG output,
Yep.
being very communicative, they're also good problem solvers, and then they're a pleasant person.
Yep.
Then obviously I'm going to look to this person and have more trust in them and give them something bigger, right, and something
For
more
sure.
complex, right?
Yep.
But if it's someone that is, has a chip on their shoulder, but and doesn't communicate and is always complaining, but their CG output is high, that still has an effect on my choice, because even though your output still might be high, but you're disgruntled and maybe you're being toxic in a team environment.
Yep.
And also it's hard to get words out of you in a meeting, or getting you to like drive conversation, and then it becomes difficult.
Yeah.
And when the industry is like oversaturated, like that, you shouldn't be doing this, right? Like, why? Like, again, think about it. I'm going to use an analogy. A painter painting my house. If I ask him, like, I want to paint my house red, can you do that? Like, I'm quite busy right now, so I kind of want you to just take care of it.
Yeah.
And then the painter is like, actually, I think red would look quite ugly, and I don't think that you should do that. I think you should make it brown. And I'm going to take a bit longer than normal, because now I need to go find this brown paint to use it instead of the red that you chose. And I'm just like, man, I just wanted you to paint my house red. Like, and now I'm just having a headache.
Yeah.
So it's like that's what I mean. It's like, so you have to see it as like you're a contractor, and you're selling your services. But you don't want to. You're not trying to sell a junior service.
Yeah.
You should be selling yourself as you can operate as a senior.
Yeah.
And that's why I think like stuff like mentorship is very important, because being able to talk about those concepts and those theories and that type of mindset can help you in your first position, because getting through that kind of hump of like being that timid, quiet, shy junior that is scared to ask things, if you can get past that, you'll climb the hierarchy and the ladder much faster, right?
I think not counterpoint, but I think another issue is when people go too far the other way, and a junior comes in with an ego and is not willing to learn from their superiors. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I personally I take that type of stuff very seriously, because I think like having a very strong team, just like mentally, is always going to be good. Of course, you can't account for everything that could happen over a duration of a show, but the team dynamic is also very important. Making sure that like everyone gets along. Of course, it's like a job, and like people have stuff to do, and like not everyone will get along, but having an ego coming into it, it's like I feel like you can get humbled very fast.
For sure, especially as a junior. Coming in with an ego as a junior is extra bad.
Yeah, and I think it's just like, what's the point? Like, I feel like as a junior, like I want to be the one that's just like a sponge.
Yeah, exactly.
Soaks it up and just like I honestly, I feel like the best juniors that I've worked with are always the ones that are just like, hey, like, can I help you out with anything? Like, I just finished my task. Like, is there anything that you want me to do? I can help pick up something, or I can help assist, another senior with something like that. Like, that's always very helpful to me, because it's like, it frees up my time. It makes my life easier.
Yeah.
And they're being helpful, and they want to be, not because that they want something in return. Yeah. It's just that they're like, hey, like, I'm free. Like, is there anything that I can do? Like, that's great.
Yeah, for sure.
But then if you have that guy that's just like, oh, I just finished my task, can I just like do like a bigger asset, like something more hero?
Oh, this is beneath
like, it
me.
just
sort
doesn't
of thing.
work like that. Yeah, exactly. So it's like,
especially at the start, I think it's the most confusing when you have juniors who have that sort of attitude.
Exactly.
And I think, unfortunately, like, that can sometimes be brought up by students doing very well at school, thinking they're now above their peers. But oh boy, do you get humbled as soon as you enter the industry, for sure.
Yeah,
like, you can be best
really don't like that.
Yeah, you can be best in your class, but step into the industry and you get humbled super quick. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from working in production that can also be applied to personal projects?
Well, that's a good question.
I don't know. How would you answer that?
Working in production that can also be applied to personal projects.
I guess I can quickly answer that. For me, it's just essentially being organized at home. That's the main thing, right?
That's a good answer. Yeah, being organized. The thing is like the lessons that you learn working in production, some of the stuff that can't be realized in a personal project, because with a personal project, unless you're doing the entire scope of the pipeline, let's say like you're one of those commercial type generalists where you'll do like you'll make the asset, you'll make the layout, you'll do the camera, you'll do the rigging, the animation, the lighting, and the final comp in the end.
Yeah.
If you're that type of person, it'll be much easier to see production workflows done in that context.
Yeah.
But if you're just making the assets, or you're just doing the lighting, or you're just doing the rig,
Yeah.
you only have a piece of the pie,
For sure.
right?
I
So,
think. Oh, so go ahead.
so like, I think like the best way, like for you, again, like you said, is to be organized.
Yeah.
But showing, like, it's not hard to show, like, if you're let's just assume that everyone here is like looking at assets, right?
Yeah.
There is a way to show assets that can work better for downstream departments.
Yeah. Like hierarchy, like organized hierarchy, proper UV layout, stuff like that, right?
Or like an example that I like to use on the organic side is when sometimes you'll see like a character, right, and they have a costume, and it's like a very wrinkly cloak or something like that, and they just Z remesh this, so it's like it's just adhering to all the wrinkles, for example.
So it can't be simmed correctly.
Exactly, it can't be simmed. So if I were to see that in a demo reel, I would think that, oh, they either don't understand the concept of cloth simulation, or they just don't care, or they're just not familiar of it. So now it's like I'm asking that question in my head, and then now I'm going to ask like, oh, well, if they don't know this, but that's that kind of show that I have in mind for this candidate, then maybe they're not the right candidate. You know what I mean? And understanding that kind of knowledge is something that you'd only kind of get from learning it in production.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, like, I assume most people just assume they sculpt a nice looking cloth. Most people wouldn't assume you'd actually leave it basic for simulation later, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some people just think like, oh, it's just cloth. It's going to be in this way forever. Yeah. It's rigged, and now you can't get rid of this giant wrinkle. It's baked in. And then now there's just wrinkles that you just can't get rid of. So then what?
I think also a lot of the production workflows we go through are things you can't really simulate anyway. So say, for example, I could be working on an asset, and then 1 week in rigging, want to do a rigging test. So I need to quickly throw together a low poly version to get into the pipeline, and then bounce back onto working on this part. And then suddenly the client wants to see a close up of just the head worked on. Like this sort of workflow, just you can't really emulate outside of work. And this is obviously a big part of working in production that you don't really see as a student, is having to constantly bounce around based on the context of what's needed for each task.
Yeah.
Every day is different.
It's different. Yeah. Nothing's the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you could work on the same airplane on multiple shows, but you'll make it differently based on the context.
For sure. Even stuff like, say, for example, imagine we're working on a plane or something, but the plane ended up being like a restore from another show, like the previous season or something. Then you will need to maybe rebuild the cockpit because there's a new set. Like there's every single asset's always different in every way. You never just clock in, make the spaceship, and you're done, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why when people are like, oh, like how long will it take you to make the spaceship?
And I've got no idea. Yeah, exactly.
Like what does the shot look like? Like how many shots? How close am I to this? What's happening to the spaceship? Does it explode?
Exactly.
Are we going to go inside? Are we going to transition from outside to inside? Is there a takeover from a realistic on-set spaceship to a CG one?
Yeah. Do we need to give this to another studio?
Yeah. There's so many things at play. So it's like I don't like the blanket statements. Like how long will it take to do this? Like how
long it takes.
Yeah, it'll take as long as it needs to take.
And then at the end of the day, you might not even get the days you would think you would need to do it, and you just somehow still have to make it work.
Exactly. Like I think a lot of the time, like in production, it's like you're given a timeline.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, what can I do given this timeline to make the best thing possible? Because I don't think there's ever been an asset that I've completed where I haven't been like, oh, I could have done something more.
Oh, 100%. I always feel that way as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more about like, okay, given this time frame, like, say, do you have 2 weeks to do something or 2 months to do something? Like, what could you do within those days? And so it's like a lot of the time, like maybe this, I guess, kind of relates to like production experience on personal projects. Like giving yourself a timeline can kind of help, like,
for sure,
you personally understand like what you can knock out and the quality that you can knock out within a given timeline.
Yep.
But when you're working on personal projects, you don't have a timeline, right?
Yep.
So it's like, and you also don't, you're not going to say, oh, I spent a year on this in your demo reel.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to put that in text or something like that.
For sure.
So it's like, but if you just gave yourself like a timeline and stuck to it, then
Yeah.
you'd really kind of see like, you know, what you're made of, right?
It's so funny. I'm trying to imagine scenarios where you could emulate the real world. I mean, you could emulate production in personal work, and it would be straight up like someone just turns up 2 months in your project and like the design's changed, restart.
Yeah.
Like that is something that can happen, right?
Yeah.
There's just, you have no idea. Every day could be completely different. Design change, script change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It gets deleted. They don't
Yeah,
do it anymore.
it's just that it's not in the show anymore. Like it's just.
Yep.
It's a-
Yep.
As a 3D supervisor, what are your best practices to keep artists aligned with a project's vision art style?
Oh, best practice to keep.
Yeah, I
artists
guess,
in mind.
can we expand this to how do you deal with difficult artists? Like, that's a two-part question. So essentially, this would be a big question about team
Okay,
dynamics.
so how do you keep the general artists aligned, and then how do you deal with difficult artists? I
Yeah,
guess.
for sure. Yeah. So how do you keep everyone on the same page, and then how do you deal with people that deviate from the page?
I think what I've learned over the years is what I say a lot. It's going to be context,
Yeah.
because every show is different, every asset is different, every team is different, every budget is different, every studio is different,
Yeah.
and you can have the same, like, let's say like you needed to make a giraffe, but you need to make a giraffe on a high budget film or a low budget film, or a film at ILM or a film at indie studio.
Yeah.
The way that you approach and making this is going to be very different, right? So being able to communicate this context relative to the end goal of that show, with that budget, with that team, and this supervisor. Maybe it's a difficult supervisor.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a very
exactly.
easygoing supervisor. Maybe it's a very conceptually sci-fi looking show, or maybe it's something that's very literal. It changes, that context changes everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of artists that are working might not see this at, you know, at face value, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you're a leader or supervisor, it's important to try to communicate this as clean as possible, because it's important to separate yourself from the work, right?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people that work in the industry, like, they can take things very personally because it's quote unquote artistic, right?
Yeah.
Quote unquote or creative. But I think once you kind of like step back and just understand like what is the request from the client, and
Yeah.
how do we try to achieve it, and how can we provide the best context to get to that end goal for the client,
Yeah.
that's going to be like the best case scenario, I find.
For sure.
And I think after like a few iterations, like, people tend to get it.
Yeah.
But some of the like the difficult artists that I've worked with,
can
like,
I-
don't understand this.
Yeah. I was gonna kind of jump in and add to the fact that, like, another simple thing of like stepping back away from yourself is like even just simple thing of like presenting your work how the supervisor wants the work presented. Like, even if like you like to do a certain way, if the VFX supervisor requests it's this way, you have to do it, right? And that's
Yeah.
a big part of stepping back from yourself and just doing what's required, essentially.
Like, again, you can have like,
It can be, yeah, the smallest thing, like just how you do your turntables.
yeah, and it's just like, but that you'll only like the supervision side can probably get a better grasp of this, because
Yeah.
they're presented with these types of contexts and
Yeah.
bumps in the road more than the artist, right?
For sure.
But
Because
then
you're
because
seeing
the-
everyone, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and you're always talking with the supervisors and the other department supervisors.
Yeah.
But then the artists aren't talking to the other supervisors. The artists are, you know, they're just working, right?
Yeah.
So if there's an absence of that context, of course they should react
Yeah.
in that way, right? They should
Yeah.
have maybe a difficult time trying to understand why the supervisor wants it done this way, or why the supervisor wants it this way. That doesn't align the way that the artist wants to do it.
Yeah.
You know, of course. So, but that's where, you know, I guess I should come in and to provide them context as to why they would like it this way,
For sure.
and why maybe the way that they're approaching it as the artist won't quite work in terms of trying to communicate what they're after.
And it
Right.
might not even be that the artists themselves are like wrong. It's more just to get everyone on the same page of what's expected
Exactly.
for this
And
specific context.
yeah, and they can get offended because it might be like, it might sound like it's maybe too harsh or something like that. And
Yeah.
that's where like you just have to, as a supervisor, you have to be careful because everyone comes from different walks of life, and working in
Yeah.
this industry, everyone's from all over the globe. Like I'm pretty sure there's like 10% Canadians in DNEG
Yeah, I know, right?
Vancouver. Everyone else is from everywhere else around the world, right?
Yeah.
So different walks of life. Everyone grew up differently. Different languages. Like like just like accents everywhere. Like you know what I mean. So it's like people are just different, and I think like being able to provide context to clarify is part of the job.
Yeah.
And that's why like communication is key for sure. Yeah,
So does helping to provide context also lead into how to deal with difficult people, essentially?
for sure. Because like if
If you can help them understand the situation.
exactly, if you can only do your best to try to alleviate the stress by giving them more context,
Yeah.
but if that's not enough, then you kind of have a problem here, right? So it's
Yeah.
like if you can't communicate, just like
Yeah.
like remove the personalities out of the issue, or the names of these people out of the issue, the people out of the issue.
Yeah.
It comes down to this is what they would like,
For sure.
and if we can't get that or try to help them get to that point, then we're doing something wrong, and that's what's asked of us right now, is to helping the client get to this point.
Yeah, for sure.
So if the artist is having difficulties trying to understand that simple concept,
Yeah.
then it's not about the task. It's just about probably something internally that the artist is dealing with. They
Yeah.
could be very stressed out that day. They could have something went on in their life, or something like that, or in that week, and they're not having a good week. And I can't assume that they're having the best week, so I have to do my best to try to communicate what the client wants, as just like the first, this is our job, this is what we need to do. But if that's difficult, then I've had conversations with artists where it's just like, let's just like put this down for a bit, like let's go grab a beer, or like go for lunch, like let's just talk, like what's up, like what's stressing you out. And
For sure.
my supervisors before, when I was younger, like they would always do the same for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because you never know what any single person is going through, right?
I think
So it's
also, yeah, this is why it's important to communicate if you do feel overwhelmed with the task, essentially.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways, essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
Because as a supervisor, there's no way you could know what every single artist is feeling on the show, right?
Exactly. And how could you?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So and subsequently enough, if a supervisor is also unable to communicate that, then it will just make things more difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because then they might be frustrated because they're trying to hit a deadline, but the artists are not able to hit the deadline, but then the artists are going through something difficult. So then it's like it's a give and take on both sides. It's not just like if the supervisor can communicate it, then they're fine. It's like, is the artist okay to receive it and also elaborate and try to get past it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because there will be people that like are like the quietest person, and they're like just this like older senior.
Yeah.
But they're like, they're lightning fast. They don't say a word, they don't say a peep. But when it comes to like, having like a proper discussion with other departments, they're locked in, and then like, you don't see them online or anything, like, they don't have a portfolio or something like that. So it's like, I remember that, like, coming into the industry, like there's just like older guys I've never heard of it, but like, I see them work, and they're working crazy fast.
Yeah.
And back then there wasn't like ArtStation or anything like
sure.
that. So like everyone just had like websites or like CDs and DVDs of their demo reels and stuff like that.
Imagine, I know, right?
But like it was just like I just, that feeling of like, oh, I've never seen this guy before, this work before, but like they're crazy, like they're really good. Yeah.
That actually kind of leads nicely into the next question: is it the exception of the norm that really high skilled people in VFX have almost no social media presence, and why is that? So what is your thoughts on social media presence and the industry, because it's not very common for VFX?
Yeah, and like we have to think about this, right? Because it's like let's break this down, because the exception or the norm, that's like high skilled people have a demo reel website or something like that, or don't, or have some sort of a social media presence. Like for me, like I don't have a lot of followers or anything like that. I'm not like trying to seek out more followers.
Yeah.
This is like literally my only portfolio page that
Man, I didn't even know you kept it up to date, honestly. I was surprised to see like the Ghostbusters stuff here.
yeah. I think I did that kind of recently, actually.
Yeah.
So it was pretty old. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. There's a ton of stuff that I don't put on here because it's just I just don't have the time. But
Yeah.
I think having a social media presence, it depends, and
Yeah.
it can work, and it can. I think in most cases it will benefit you
Yeah.
for sure, because it's like, again, you're selling a service, right?
Yeah.
So why would you not want to have like to show off your ability of your services out
Yep.
there, for people to see, right?
Mm.
Because people that have an online presence, can get jobs just by people stumbling upon their portfolio. I'm sure people have contacted you because they've seen
For
your
sure.
portfolio. You know what I
Yep.
mean? But for me, it's like I guess like I'm comfortable in my position now, so it's like I'm not trying to get more eyes on my work or anything like that. Like, I feel like, a lot of the best work I've done has always been at the studio. It's
Yeah.
like I don't really do personal work either because I'm quite busy.
For sure.
So I don't think it's necessary. But I think that there's a huge, like, the majority of people, or like the majority of the best artists that I've worked
You'll
with
never
or
hear of.
that I know, they have no online presence at all. Like, not even like a Facebook or Instagram page, nothing, like nothing.
Yeah.
But then when you see them work, they're just like, yeah, insane. And that I think is really cool
Mm.
because like I feel like in like the younger generation, it's like they always think of it like it's kind of like an expectation to have
Yep.
something, but it's really not.
For
And
sure.
it will always help, obviously, when it comes to, I mean, these people probably have like private demo reels that they send out,
Yep.
when it comes to interviews and stuff like that, but nothing public,
Yep.
right? And so I feel like everyone knows who like those really good people are, those really good people that like
Within
have
the
no online
industry.
presence.
For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the industry is very small, right?
Yep.
So it's like it's not hard to have an idea of like who's working where and stuff, because we're like we're all mostly like all friends and buddies, so we all know each other from all the other studios.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely not a requirement. It can definitely help for
For
sure,
sure.
but not a requirement. Yeah.
I think, yeah, especially like when it comes to me, for example, like I have a pretty massive online presence. Not massive, but I have a big online presence for hard surface modeling. But
Mhm.
like to me, I'm just a normal modeler. It's just there's so many amazing hard surface modelers that no one will ever hear of, which are
Mhm.
way better than me, but they just have no presence, right? So I feel like this also kind of leads into the fact that I don't really think having an online presence or the size of your online presence doesn't necessarily match up with, like, just because you have more followers doesn't mean you're technically a better artist than someone else, right?
Mhm. Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
there's also some artists which kind of, can seem bigger than they are through their social media platforms, essentially.
Yeah. And it goes into the idea of selling services,
For
right?
sure.
Of course, they want to like boast in their portfolios that they can create this thing because that's part of what they're selling, right? So it makes sense. It makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also have some people that like have no online presence at all, or like some people that are not even like computer people. Like when they're at home,
For sure.
they're like they live like hippies, like they're
Yeah.
nowhere near computers at all,
For
and
sure.
they live in a woods or in a cabin, up north or something like that.
Yeah.
And like some of these guys are like the most interesting because like it's such a big contrast in terms of like their work life and then
Yep.
their own personal life. It's crazy. It's not like everyone just goes home and just does more
Yeah,
personal work,
exactly.
art or draw or paint.
I feel like I'm definitely the exception in VFX. I think more
Mhm.
games and concept, they tend to do a lot more personal work. But I think when it comes to VFX, I think that was one thing that really surprised me is how few people actually did personal work in the VFX industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I
Only
don't
like
see,
a few.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just an
Oh yeah,
observation, I
yeah.
guess,
There's
for
nothing
sure.
wrong with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
People have lives.
what are your thoughts on people on the topic of like being like, having a social media presence, for example? I think something that also kind of brings up is some people tend to inflate their contributions online. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think about people that kind of slightly exaggerate their work or slightly exaggerate their titles, essentially?
I mean, because like I
You touched on the fact
conducted
that it's a small industry, right?
yeah. And I've seen this even just in interviews,
Yeah.
Like there will be like someone that posts something. It's like I know that you didn't do that.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I know that you
Uh,
didn't do what you're saying that you did.
yeah.
But sometimes I'll try to just like talk them through it because I want to know like what they or like how they talk about what they did,
So you've
even though I
dealt with
don't.
this in interviews specifically.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Whether it's juniors or seniors, for sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like I remember I interviewed a junior once, and they were talking. I forgot what movie it was, but there was like they talked about how they did some like rocks or something
Mm.
like that, some hero rocks,
Yeah.
quote quote hero rocks, and then they were showing like a clip from a movie, which like was like a very exciting shot,
Yeah.
of like some rubble and stuff that was going on. And I was like, okay, so like pause it, like what did you do? Like I just want to know like what you did exactly. And they're like, oh yeah, it's not this shot, but it's kind of like what's going on in the shot. It's the same thing. And I'm just like, but that's not
That's not what
that's
you're
not what you
showing.
did. Like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
that's not what you did though. It's like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or uh, I've had people where they'll say that they've done like a digidouble for an actor or something like that, and then they'll show the shot of just an actor just acting, like it's the actual actor,
Yeah. It's not the
but then
CG
they
one.
said that it's not the CG one.
Yeah.
And it's like, so why would you show that? And it's just like, oh, it's because it looks like this. It
Yeah.
looks like this state or this hero or something like that.
And I
And I was like,
assume,
why would you do that?
yeah, I assume also as soon as these sorts of doubts sort of turn up, right, it makes it much harder to justify hiring someone, correct?
Yeah,
Because
right.
then you don't know you can trust at this point.
Exactly, and I think that also leads to the point where how I think recommendations are very strong, especially in
For
a
sure.
oversaturated industry. Having good strong recommendations is really big for me,
Yeah.
because I think like whenever I'm hiring someone or like I'm close to hiring someone, like um I'll try to find some recommendations or like some feedback from some people that have worked with this person, just because the industry is very small,
Yeah.
to get an understanding if there's any like major red flags or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think people realize how small the industry is. People are usually kind of aware of who has worked on what. So as soon as
Mhm.
something appears in a demo reel of an asset, there's a pretty decent chance you could find out like essentially what they did, right?
I think so. Like I feel like it's not hard to
Especially when it comes to
like
the hero stuff, right?
yeah. I think like even just knowing what movie it was, like, oh, this movie, like it's pretty easy for us to be like, oh, that movie was done at this studio. Oh,
Yeah,
that studio? Okay, I know this so and so and so and so at that studio. Let me
yeah,
reach out, you
for
know?
sure.
And especially because people are moving around quite often, it's really not hard to keep track of what's going on in the industry. Again, it's very, very small. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how it is with the job market at the moment, but how would you get a job in VFX? What are your recommendations for students getting a job?
Right now.
Let's say
Um,
in general, but also let's extend it to a second part of right now because of the state of the industry.
mhm. I think it's kind of, I guess it's the same answer for both. I think like right now, like this is like unprecedented times, right?
Yeah,
But I think 2025 looks
looks like
pretty
the
good
work's coming back, right?
for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, which is a good thing. Um, but I think like if I were a junior that doesn't have that much experience, is just what I always say is just to constantly just like update your portfolio. Like I don't like it when a student just makes one thing and then they just sit on it and then just like, how come I'm not getting any prospects? Like
yeah,
I would rather like you just do another little mini project.
yeah.
It's to do like a 2-week project. Like see what you're made of in those 2 weeks.
So
Like take
just
it from
keep
start to
working.
finish. Yeah, just keep working, like expanding your portfolio, like do something broad, like learn something new, like like having like a niche skill can be beneficial, like a new piece of software that can aid you, or like even
Yeah,
like learning some
learning
scripting or something like
Houdini or
that.
something, right?
Yeah, like something like that, because that will make you kind of like stand out. I'll always notice those people that like are good as artists, but then they're like, oh, I actually have done some rigging too. It's like, oh, that's actually pretty beneficial.
Yeah.
Like that knowledge is very helpful. So
Even if they weren't rigged, they still have the understanding of rigging, which will make them more employable.
exactly. Or they haven't been paid to rig, or they haven't
Yeah.
worked as a rigger. Like that. That's very good. I think juniors nowadays, like I think they need to be more broad. I think like
Yeah.
again, like if you're gonna go very specialized, like you have to like
Be the best.
already very competitive. Like yeah, so the quality of the demo, it's like it has to be there no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Like how can you supplement it? Because yeah, the what I always say to students, like it will take four things. It will take your work, it will take connections, and then it will take timing and luck.
Luck is the biggest one for me, I feel.
Yeah, and like so the work already has to be at a high level, right?
Yeah.
And you have to break it down and show that you're capable of doing it creatively and technically, right?
Yep.
And then your connections have also need to be important, right? So
Yep.
like connections with recruiters, even going to events as a junior,
Yep.
connecting with other professionals. There's a nice and kind way of going to connect with professionals
Yep.
online. You don't just like pester anyone and everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Be professional to the professionals.
yeah, like have like some genuine conversations and
Yeah.
stuff like that, rather than like trying to seek like a position out of that.
I think we can tell when someone's trying to use us to benefit themselves.
Yeah, and then normally like I won't respond.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
and then like the timing and luck is like what you can't control, right?
Yeah.
You can't control the timing of when a studio hires.
Yep.
Like or if when a show comes into the studio, you can't control this, right?
Yep.
So they could hire at a moment's notice. Like there have been times where like oh, we need someone, and then like a week later they've hired someone.
Yeah.
It'll be like that fast.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And then when it comes to like luck, it's like you can't control like who they hire. Like you could have the same two people made the exact same demo reel. One person will get hired over the other for a reason that you just do not control. It could be that maybe they're not as skilled as you are, or maybe they are, or maybe they just had a better interview. Maybe they had a recommendation. Maybe they didn't. Maybe there's just something that they said in terms of how they were describing their demo reel, either technically or creatively, that resonated well with the interviewer. And you just don't have control over this. So it's like it's easy to stress about like, oh, especially when you're in school, it's like, oh, why did my classmate get hired? And I don't feel like there's good.
Man.
And like I hate hearing this because like you have no idea. You really just have no idea. So and you have no control over this.
Man, I remember there was one time where someone sent me 2 demo reels and asked me which one I thought was better, and I said, okay, this one I think is better. And then the person was like, that's my reel, but my friend is the one that got the job. I'm like,
yeah, I like that.
I don't know. I don't know the full context of the situation, right? It could be as simple as they knew someone in the studio. Yeah, I know, right? Or they could just be simply like they didn't need a visa. It could be that simple, right?
Yeah, it's true.
We have no idea what the context is, and it can simply just be luck. Like
exactly.
Yeah, like when I first got my first job in the industry, it was simply because MPC just happened to need modelers right away, and I just happened to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's pretty much
it's kind of like the same as me, actually.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like needed a bunch of juniors, and I was just like, oh, I'm ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's essentially about working hard to put yourself into the best position to get lucky.
Yeah, because like when you say someone is like you're lucky, it's like they don't see it's like all the hard work that you put into it, right?
For sure.
So like why would you not put your best foot forward?
Yep.
To ensure your chances, right? Whether that be continue to expand your portfolio, learn something new. Like why would you not want to do this? It's like you're only going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like when students are very stagnant or they don't want to do anything, they made their demo and now they're just taking a long break. Like some of the best students that I know are the ones that just kept going.
For sure.
Kept going.
Usually they're the ones that get hired, the ones that just keep working, right?
And it doesn't phase them too. They're not bothered by the fact that they need to expand their portfolio. They're just like, I just want to try something new. I want to try to learn something. I'll make a little mini project surrounding that theory. Yeah.
It's funny in saying that it's been 12 years now. I've been in the industry. I've never not had a personal project going.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can keep working when I don't need a job, I feel like a lot of other people can keep working if they want the job, of course.
Yeah. Like again, like if someone out there is going to do it, like if you're not going to be doing it, like if you're not going to be learning something or expanding your
Yeah,
portfolio, some other
someone else
student
is,
is.
for sure.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Someone says, what if you come up with a new demo reel every 2 weeks? Firstly, I think that that's a bit too short. But they said, do recruiters still watch the latest? So what I would recommend is, say you send your demo reel to a recruiter, nothing really happens. I would maybe wait 3 months and have like a big jump between your two demo reels and then send it back to the recruiter, just informing them you've updated your reel. I think that's better than being like, hey, every 2 weeks, here's a new sculpt or whatever, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I think like let's provide some context here, because if you're releasing a demo reel every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
but maybe the quality isn't as
It's
good or
not
something
really, I mean, what
better,
can you do in 2 weeks, right?
yeah, I guess it depends, right? So
Yeah.
it's like if the quality is not getting any better, then it's hard to communicate or show that like you're also getting better, so it's like
Yeah.
however long it may take to pump something else new out, sure, but you also have to consider that recruiters, like especially when it comes to like asset demos as opposed to all the other departments, we're only just like a small piece of the pie, right? They're looking at a ton of other things at the same time.
Yeah.
I personally do not believe that recruiters are looking at the demos
No.
and keeping up to date with everyone.
Yeah, for
I've
sure.
had people reach out to me and be like, hey, like I updated something on my portfolio, if you want to check it out. It's just like I'm not checking this out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like it just like they're so swamped, they're so busy. I think as long as your own personal workflow in these mini projects that you're doing, it's like you're improving and you're getting better. That'd be the best thing, and getting some good feedback either from some professionals
Yeah.
or some acquaintances, like will be beneficial for you as well.
Yeah.
And
I
I've
guess
even said to go ahead.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, I guess if we just extend this outside of recruiters to just other professionals in general, I think more the point I'm trying to make is you don't want to hassle them. You want to show actual jumps in quality, like
Yeah,
what you said, right?
exactly.
So
Yeah.
to me, I think like 3 months, that's a whole new project, right?
hmm
So that also leads into one of the questions was, what do you mean by big jump? Does that mean one big project or maybe three smaller projects? For me, I would rather see a big new juicy project, if that makes sense.
To me, like I had one student that like continued to just make some single props, but
Yeah.
quality was very high. And
Okay.
what he did with these props is he even he he walked in like a hallway and then tracked a shot, and then he put his asset into the shot. It was like a mixing, like industrial mixing pot at like a
Yeah.
bakery or something like that. And he tracked it like in the shot, and then he lit it in the shot, and it looked like it was part of the shot scene that he shot with his phone.
Yeah.
And even though it was a very simple prop, what he did with it showed a lot of skill.
Yeah.
And now I wouldn't think like, oh, I need to make this giant transformer.
For sure.
I can
Okay.
grab some attention, because if the transformer looks half-assed, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So really, it's like whether the project is 2 weeks, whether it's 3
As long as
months,
the quality is high, right?
if the quality is high and it looks good, you're onto something. But like that's where like having good, honest, proper feedback
For sure.
from hopefully a professional will be good.
Yeah.
Because maybe your classmates may think, oh yeah, that's great, but then realistically, it's like that looks like shit.
I mean, this might come off kind of blunt, but what do your classmates know about quality, essentially?
Yeah, you don't know. It's just, I mean, they could be biased,
Yeah.
so you just don't know, and that's where having some professional insight is helpful.
For sure.
Yeah. Or I even think like there have been times where like people have reached out for mentorship and stuff like privately, and I think a mentorship, even if it might be like a session or two with a professional that offers that service,
Yeah.
I think can be very good,
For
because
sure.
like again, you get firsthand experience and trusted experience with someone that's actively working, and paying for their time to really try to analyze like where you're at, where you can go, where you need to take it, and and follow up with that can
Yep.
also be very good, rather than you've graduated school, so now you don't have the industry professionals there, you don't have your classmates anymore, so now you're just like by yourself, like what are you going to do? Like this is where I think like a mentorship session or two or something like that can be very helpful and beneficial.
Just to give you like a realistic touch base of where you are, essentially.
Yeah, like I feel like I wish I could have done that
Oh,
when I
hell
was
yeah.
a student.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why I didn't think of this, like to try. I mean, and
But
I
was it
guess
really
it
a
wasn't
thing
like
when we were?
LinkedIn. Yeah, it's not like
Yeah.
there's no LinkedIn of or like there
There's
wasn't any
no
station.
casual live stream with two 12-year veterans
Yeah,
talking to each
there
other.
was a
Like,
Twitch. Yeah, exactly. That's true.
yeah.
That's funny. Yeah,
So would you encourage students to reach out to professionals?
I think as long as it's tasteful,
Yeah.
I think as long as it's genuine, like
I
I think
think oh
I
sorry.
would I would probably try,
Yeah.
you know.
I like to use the word genuine because I feel like if someone reaches out with the intention of like, here's my work, give me a job, I think that comes off completely differently to here's my work, what are your thoughts on it? Because
Mhm.
like I feel like if a student is good enough to get them a job, you might recommend them without being asked, essentially.
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel
Mhm.
it's much better to come off as wanting feedback. And then obviously if they're willing to help you get a job, that's something like the icing on the cake, right? I would never want to approach a profession and be like, here's my portfolio, give me a job, pretty much.
Yeah, I think if even if they had an open position,
Yeah.
I would never lean into any sort of idea or even hint at any idea of like, hey, could you help me get a job?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of like weight on the shoulders
Yeah,
for someone that
exactly.
doesn't know you, right?
Yeah,
Because like if
recommendations
I'm
hold
speaking
weight.
up, yeah, exactly. So if I if I stick my neck out for you, just because we just had a genuine conversation, but we've never met before, I don't know what you're like as a person,
Yeah,
but you might sound nice through text, and then it fails. That doesn't look good on me, right?
for sure.
So you have to like consider that. So I think like it should be about just like seeking just genuine feedback,
Mm,
and like but also do your own due diligence. Like if
for
your own
sure.
personal work like looks like, if you believe it's genuinely good and you've gotten feedback from others, then reaching out to like a senior professional could be that next step.
Yeah.
But if your stuff looks like ass and you personally don't believe it looks that great, like do you want to waste that time? Because like
Mm,
then it's kind of like you might like ruin a connection there, right? But if your stuff
true.
is like genuinely great, you got some good feedback from your classmates, got some good feedback from your instructors,
Yep.
and everyone's saying that it's pretty good. It's like, okay, maybe I can ask a professional and see what they think, and that you could build a nice strong connection because
Yeah.
they're, hey,
So you
that
want to
actually
build
looks pretty
genuine
good.
connection, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Because yeah, we can kind of tell if like people kind of are trying to use us for their benefit, essentially. But I feel like if I've built like a genuine connection with someone over a period of time, I would be much more likely to stick my neck out for them.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah, because then it's like, I believe in you. It's like, hey man, like I think you got a chance here. Like
Yeah.
your stuff's looking great. Like maybe you can make some little tweaks here and there. Maybe you need to adjust your
Oh
presentation.
man.
But
And then if you
it's
do the feedback, oh my God, big, big brownie points. The amount of
yeah,
people that don't actually do the feedback after you hassle the professional is crazy.
yeah. Because like what I'm investing. I'm also giving you my time of the day, right? So it's
Yeah.
like if you're not going to give that respect of of the following up or or reaching back out, it's kind of like, oh man, I'm not going to want to talk to you again, right?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if they don't do the feedback right. It's like, well, why would I waste my time?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think maybe we talked about it a little bit before.
A
I
long
always
time
tell
ago.
the story to my students because
Mm,
I try to give them context, like where I'm coming from
for sure.
going into the mentorship and like my stance on it. Like I take the mentorship seriously because I had a difficult time in
Yeah,
school,
exactly.
so I try
Does
to like
that
shake it up a bit. Yeah.
does it also make you less not less able, does it make you less tolerable of excuses, knowing that you came from a hard entry?
Uh, a
Like,
little bit,
yeah,
because I think like everyone has their own problems. Like everything's
yeah,
relative, right?
for sure.
So I understand that for sure. But when I was trying to get into the industry, like in those 3 years, or 2 or 3 years,
Yeah,
like
3 years, that's crazy, man.
yeah, like I had
That
a
really
very
puts into
difficult time.
context. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like yeah, after school, like I lost my girlfriend. She said like I wasn't making any money, and I was like, I'm trying to like build up my career. I'm trying to like make my dream happen, and like that really hit me hard. It's just like so like I went through my own trials and tribulations, but I knew that no matter what
Mm,
came, like I wasn't gonna give up. Like
for
giving
sure.
up wasn't like an option.
Yep.
So I just like stayed focused. Like I had the blinders on, and I just like powered through.
Yep.
So if I can kind of feel that kind of personality from the student. Like if they don't
Yep.
have the if they're kind of just like complain to just complain, like I
Will
don't really buy
you
it.
will you have this conversation with the student about like if you don't think they're cut out for it?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's been plenty of times. I was about to say,
No, no, no,
yeah,
no. But I think
I've
it's
had,
good. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm honest. Like there'll be many times where I'll talk to the student. I'll be like legitimately like one on one. I'll be like, do you want this? Because like the like what you're doing like right now, it doesn't look like you really want this as bad.
Yeah.
Because like I'll always tell them, I was like, because when I was 3 years out of school, and I still haven't got my job, and I was scrubbing shit off toilets, as a runner, like
Yeah.
I wanted it fucking bad. Like, do you want it? Like,
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
mean? So like, but then they're telling me like they don't want to they don't want to start a new project, or they're having issues with their concept, and you can't figure out like a technical problem. Just like you have to find a way around it.
Yeah.
Like, me just telling you the answer is not the answer, right?
Yeah.
So like I always say that quote as like how bad do you want it? Because I
Yeah.
wanted it bad, and I wasn't thinking about what studio to work at, what kind of assets I
Mm.
want to work on. I just wanted to get close to this. I just wanted to help contribute to a movie. So
Yeah,
I
for sure.
fucking wanted it. So like, how bad do you want it?
I think
Yeah.
it's also like students have to be aware that they're also competing against Johns and Andrews in student form, like other students that do want it. And then when the rare job turns up, it's like, are you going to be like at the front of the line, or like what are you going to be? Like if you don't work hard, you essentially will just fall behind.
Mm-hmm. And I see it with even like new hires and stuff. Like even after interviewing, they could sound like very, very nice and pleasant, but then when it comes to working with them, like it's very different. But really it should be about like, once you start the job, it's like that's where you should really push, like
Yeah,
show them what you're actually made of and what you interviewed for,
for
right?
sure. This might be kind of controversial. What are your thoughts on the fact of like what we're essentially pushing for is not work-life balance, which has kind of been a thing which has kind of popped up. What are your thoughts on
Like in terms of like my mentality going into
going
getting a
into the
job.
industry? Yes. Yep. Because what we're advocating for is not work-life balance, or you know what I mean?
I mean, when competition is high,
Yep.
like your hours are you're running out of hours in the day to get something done, right?
Yep.
So maybe I could have gotten my job sooner than 3 years, or maybe I could have taken longer.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I think like if you don't do that, then someone else is gonna take it. I mean,
For sure. Yeah. I mean,
I
I'm
don't know what to say.
100.
Like,
Yeah, I'm 100% your side as well. But I know, for example, people do, especially online, talk about the fact of how we shouldn't push for like a hardworking, only thing that's important in your life is work sort of thing. But for me, I kind of feel like breaking into the industry itself is kind of like that, and you don't really have much of a choice. And then the work-life balance can come later. That's how I kind of
yeah,
feel.
but I feel like, but think about it, like in any industry, like don't even think about like VFX. Like,
Yeah,
what about like internships? I wish I had an internship.
for
I
sure.
wish I could. I wish it was an unpaid internship.
Mm.
I wish I could have had that instead of scrubbing shit off toilets. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
but is that not? But that's promoting like not getting paid.
for
You
sure.
know what I mean? But I would take that, at a moment's notice when I
Yeah.
was at 10, 11, 12 years ago. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So, but again, like if you're not doing it, someone else will,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's the main point though, right? Like people can advocate for work-life balance all they want, but at the end of the day, especially at the start when it's the most competitive, if you're not working hard, someone else is. And I feel like once you get in the industry and you've kind of proven yourself and established yourself for a few years, I feel that's when you can pull your foot off the pedal and focus more on work-life balance, which
The
most,
hardest part is just getting in.
yeah, for sure. Because most people actually do this in VFX, I'd say. Because
Mhm.
most VFX artists don't do personal work or like I do or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But I feel
Very
like
true.
to get in, you kind of have to just accept that you have to work hard.
Yeah. Like
It's
anything
just
though,
how it is. Yeah, for sure.
you know? Like just because this is quote unquote maybe a bit more creative than others
Yeah.
shouldn't mean that you work less. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
So again, we're not saving lives here. You know, you're working on movies.
It's pixels on the screen, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're pushing points. You
Yeah.
know, and it's you can make good money. You know, so like, what? Why would you not want to work hard for that? Like, I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm working every day. You know, I
For
I
sure.
still feel like I'm having fun, even though like I might be stressed out at a problem or
Oh
something.
man,
But
I still have not woken up on a Monday and wish the weekend was still here. Like
yeah,
I've never experienced that in 12 years. It's kind of
yeah,
crazy.
you know,
But I've worked
sometimes on
hard.
the weekend, like I want to, like sometimes like I just want to like jump in. I just want to like do something. I want Monday to come. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
exactly.
bring on Monday. Like forget Friday, right?
Yeah.
Like is that not like how amazing is that? Like how awesome of a feeling is that? So why would I not fucking work my ass off for that? Well,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just an interesting topic because, like, I know, for example, a lot of, I think especially going by Twitter and especially looking at a lot of games artists, they talk about how they regret working hard and advise other students to not do it, but then at the same time, to get to where they are, they worked hard. So I feel like you can't really tell people to not work hard while that's what you did to get in. I feel like.
Yeah, that's why I tell my students, like, if you waited only 2 months and you haven't got any prospects, like, try waiting 3 years. That's what I say to them.
Yeah.
Like every time someone complains about time, like, oh, like I don't know, like, I'm like, if you can wait as long as I have, then you can complain.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
it might be mean to say, but I'm just like I'm trying to tell them, like, if I can wait that long and I still have my head on my shoulder, and then I still scrub shit off toilets and fucking swept floors and shit. Like,
Yeah.
if I can still do that, and then I'm at where I'm at, like, what does that say? Like I still push through like really shitty times to get through something very, very minuscule, like a
Yeah.
runner job. You know what I mean? So
And it's just crazy to see where you ended up. Like,
yeah, that's why
like lead on both dunes, building the modeling, texturing the worm, stuff like that.
yeah, like that's why I would say, like, I don't regret any of the choices that I made during that time. Like even picking the worst school. I mean, not the worst school, like the cheapest
Yeah.
school. Like having to relearn software, like having to work at a restaurant after school to pay my bills. Like I wouldn't take that up because I feel like that taught me a lesson that, like, it hit me so hard that it felt like such a big fail that it lit that fire under my ass to
Yeah,
kind of like
intense
do something.
perseverance, right?
Yeah, that perseverance. That's why I said it's like that's one of the biggest things. Like if you don't have that will, that
Yeah,
strong will, that perseverance to push on through, maybe this actually isn't the industry for you.
for
Maybe
sure.
this isn't the job that you might want to do, because this can be very stressful sometimes, right?
Yeah,
But it's also very, very rewarding.
for sure. Because yeah, I feel like for me, coming from a runner, dropping everything in Australia, moving to London with nothing
Yeah, I can't
essentially.
even imagine I didn't even do that. Like I left out. Like
Yeah,
I'm born and raised here.
yeah,
I didn't even have to do that. I can't even fucking imagine if I had to do that in
yeah,
another country by myself. You know,
yeah,
that's way that I think of that as harder than me waiting 3 years, honestly, because like I can't. I'm so timid and shy. Early on in my career, that I couldn't fathom like thinking that, like, oh, I need to move to the UK in order to get a runner job
yeah.
to work.
I guess this is also kind of the reality: is you are competing against people that will be willing to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you see as the core principles for creating high quality photoreal characters and creatures?
Whoa. Okay.
Where do you start with a question like that?
Yeah. The core. What is the core principles? That's
Yeah,
the question. I
yeah,
think like the I think really like it's about observation, and I think like you can relate this to anything that you create. Like, to be honest, like you don't really even need to, like, when it comes to like organic assets, like you don't need to know every single name of every single muscle in the human body.
Yeah.
But if you can't like look at a reference and understand how to translate forms and what the lighting tells you in a reference or something like that, or the how material response of a surface is like, and how to emulate that, it's hard to make something realistic, you know. So
Yeah.
the best way to get about this is to, just to really try to analyze what you're looking at, and it's like, how do I achieve that look, right?
Yeah.
And again, you can apply that to anything, whether it's you're doing hard surface or organic,
So
or
studying reference essentially is the most
yeah,
important thing.
I think that's what it is. Like, whenever I'm trying to teach like a student how to like analyze like a face, you know, all the students try to think about like, oh, I'm reading so much anatomy books, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm just like, yeah, like you're doing that, but then everything that you're sculpting isn't really translating to what you're learning. So why don't we just break down to just simply, it's like, what do you see? Like,
Yeah.
I'll let you ask them, like, I'll pull up a picture of a face. I'll be like, what do you see? Like, like, tell me like the features that you see in this reference, and how do you expect to try to emulate it?
Yeah.
And start as simply as that. Always start for like, from like the largest forms, like your primary forms, and then your secondary forms, and then your tertiary forms, just like anything, right?
Yeah.
It's always like, how can you achieve something as broadly as possible, and then refine and refine and refine.
Yeah.
Because a lot of students will tend to want to jump to the detail very
For
fast,
sure.
right?
In the hard surface is
And
the same thing, right?
yeah, like anything.
Yeah.
It's like anything, like, because that's the fun. They think is like, that's the fun stuff. That's what will sell it, right?
Oh,
But
but
it's
yeah,
really like, it's like the primary forms, the shapes that you can tell if someone knows what they're doing based on like their primary
yeah,
shapes. It shouldn't take details to show their skill.
yeah. Oh man, especially like the amount of confidence it gives you if all the base forms are all correct first, and then you add like the detail is the easy part, right?
Yeah, it's like the last 10-20% or something
Yeah.
like that.
That's
Yeah,
why
but then
I've
it will fail. It will fail if that 80 or 90% is not there.
for sure.
Yeah. hmm hmm
Yeah, it's exactly the same with hard surface. Like people try and jump into like cutting panels and stuff like that. I'm like, whoa, slow down. We haven't even matched the
hmm
concept forms yet. Like, chill out.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
What type of models would you recommend to put in a character artist portfolio for VFX?
Oh, I mean, first of all, there's not really like a character artist
Yeah.
in VFX. Like
Mm.
like you'll have like your asset,
It's
like
not like
animates.
games.
Yeah, it's not like games. Like, there's no contract that will really say character artist for film.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, if you're a junior going to the industry, and you want to work on the organic side, then just show lots of iterations of your organic work. But I feel like there should be some kind of progression. That there should be some, it should be getting better and better. So always you put your best foot forward, of course,
Yeah.
right? But show different, variations of said organic work. If you're liking to do digit doubles or likenesses, if you pick an actor or something like that, that likeness better be spot on.
Yeah.
If there's any sort of uncanny valley with like the shape of the head or something like that, like it'll be seen right away, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're making like the size and scale of the proportion of this hippo that you made, it doesn't quite look right, but then you're still publishing because you want to kind of like rush it out.
Yeah.
I'd rather spend the time to try to really nail the look of something, from a fundamental standpoint, before I release something. Because if there's something that I catch like in an interview that looks kind of off, like, I'm just gonna ask questions, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, you go into the interview, I look at the work, and then there's no question. I'm just like, oh, when can you start? Right?
Yeah. Essentially.
But if I'm asking, it's like, why does that eye look slightly like the eyes of that human? It looks slightly cross-eyed, and then now I just can't unsee it.
Yeah, for sure.
And now I'm just gonna be staring at it the entire time, and that takes away from me appreciating all the good work that you did elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What are your thoughts on, say, for example, doing like realistic animals versus like made up creatures? Do you think it's good to have both in your portfolio?
I think it's good to have both to show
Studying the real
like,
world and
diversity.
then
Yeah,
okay,
for
yeah.
sure. But I think I've seen a lot of portfolios where it's solely just like fantasy creatures,
Yeah.
and I think like sometimes like I've seen a lot of like organic modelers that like really lean on the fantasy side,
They
because
kind of cheat,
it is
right?
quite easy to hide behind something that's not real.
Yeah.
But when you do something that's realistic, or you do like a face and it looks very spot on, it's like you can really tell if someone, is really good at it, right? So if you want to stay on the organic side, showing that kind of wide variety
Yeah.
will be nice, because at least I know that if there is a conceptual type task or a fantasy asset that needs to be created, I can count on you. Or if there's a digidouble face likeness that needs to be done, I can also count on you.
Yeah.
But if you're only good at just faces and likenesses, but then you're really not good at conceptual work,
Yeah.
then it's like you put yourself already in a more narrow hole, right? So being able to be as broad as possible is always going to be good. Even if you gravitate towards hard surface work, I think like any junior getting into the industry now, it's going to be good to show a variety.
Yeah.
So try dabble into some organic stuff, or like if you really want to go solely just the hard surface route, like
Yeah.
you better be fucking locked
Good.
in. Like you
For sure.
better be all up in there, just like like
Yeah.
because you're their competition.
Exactly. Unfortunately,
right?
Yeah.
So there's an expectation there, and
Yeah.
and there's also like repercussions as well for not being broad, right?
Yeah. I was
Then
gonna.
you narrow your prospects, right?
I was gonna also ask your thoughts on this. It's not often that a studio gets crazy creature work, right? So should students temper their expectation of being a creature artist, or at least like walking into a studio and doing the main creature, for example?
I think so, because when it comes to hero creatures, there's a lot of implications downstream, right? It's
Yeah.
not just create a simple neutral asset and that's it.
So of
There's a
course
lot
the
of
senior will
involvement.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense that the senior would get it, because there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen between the asset, the rigging team,
Yeah.
CFX, and animation, to ensure that the creature works out in the end, right? It's not just gonna be you make a model, you send it off, and you forget about it. There's
Yeah.
gonna be a lot of back and forth. It's not a linear process.
Yeah.
So I think, students should, I mean, it's hard, because like just making the model itself of said creature is like half the battle,
Yeah.
right? There's another half to make it work.
Yeah.
And a lot of those technical side of things and that preparation might not be able to be presented well enough in a simple asset demo reel.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
you
like
can't
you
really
need more context.
perform the extra context personally, right?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, if you had a broader portfolio, then at least it's showing that you're versatile.
Yeah.
Right. But again, it's just like the whole, honing in on the hard service. If that's what you want to do, and you know that that's all you want to do, and you understand the repercussions of narrowing your prospects,
Yeah.
then you better go all in, like
For sure.
110%. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on? For me, I feel like the optimal portfolio is essentially one thing from the real world to prove that you can match 1-to-1, and one thing that's the concept to show you can problem solve. What are your thoughts on that?
I think problem solving will be a factor no matter what, for sure.
But concept
But
problem, do you feel concept problem solving is differently? Being able to make up the back, for example, that you can't see.
Yeah, so that's a good point, and I've encountered this a lot in during the mentorship, where
Yeah.
what's something that's hard is like you can teach like someone how to like make an aesthetic asset, but design is something that is a big hurdle,
For sure.
and not a lot of people have an eye for design.
Yeah.
So being able to solve what the concept looks like from the back can be very difficult
Yeah.
for some people. And that doesn't mean that you're not good at creating an asset.
Yeah.
But if you still made like a very good asset, but in terms of your design on the other side of it, it looks really bad, then
That just holds
it's just
everything down.
distracting.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
It'll take away from the good stuff that you've already done.
I've seen amazing looking models that look bad just because the design itself doesn't look good.
Exactly.
And it kind of invalidates the whole model.
Exactly. So then it raises a question. It's like, well, then why? Why do that? Because now, again, that's all I'm thinking about. It's just distracting. Yeah, all good, all good.
Oh, wait, one last question actually. What are your thoughts on Blender in the VFX industry?
Okay, and to wrap it up, yeah. Uh, very simply, it's a cool tool. I think it has its uses for sure, but it doesn't define whether or not you'll be successful in the industry. I don't think. It's not. Unfortunately, it's like let's use my analogy. You know, you're a painter painting my house. You know,
Yeah.
like let's say that I want you to paint my house. It's a big house, so but then the painter says instead of using the standard paint roller to paint the house, they're going to use a piece of rope to paint my house. They're going to dip the rope and then they're going to slap it against my house. Okay, it will get done, right? It will get done eventually, but it's not like a standard way of painting a house, right? So it has its use case. It could work, right? But it's not what the other painters are using. You know what I mean?
Man, that's
It's
such that's such a fucking good analogy, man. What the hell?
yeah, but exactly. But Blender's free. That the piece of the rope was free. You know, it's
Yeah, what
you
about
didn't
like
have to pay for
stick you find on the floor? Use
Yeah,
that to paint the
exactly.
house.
You know, or like
And
a
then
smaller, like a paintbrush. You
yeah.
know, like a small paintbrush versus like a paint roller.
And
You
then
know,
what
but you're adamant
happens?
on using it. You
Yeah,
know,
and then what happens when other painters need to use the same? They need to pick up the brush while you're on lunch break, or you're the
exactly.
rope. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the person holding the rope, the blender guy, wants to use the roller, and they're like, I don't know how to hold this. You know, do I use my teeth? You know, and then everyone that's using rollers, all the other painters are using rollers. They're like, oh, this guy. So,
Yeah. Fuck, man. That's the best way of describing the situation for sure.
yeah, I always use the painter painting my house as an analogy because I'm trying to separate the visual effects part of it
Yeah.
and try to make it seem like in more layman terms, you know, like to simpler terms.
Yeah. Man, that was perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so much,
good way
man.
to end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, good.
I'll end the call here.
Yeah, well, I'll pop in again maybe in the future. We can
For
just
sure,
chat
man.
about
I'm
anything
sure. Yeah, I'm sure everyone enjoys these sorts of chats for sure.
yeah, cool,
All
awesome.
right,
Thanks
man.
for
Thanks so much. I'll catch you later. See ya.
yeah. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.